Part 13. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 121. Ji Chang's grabbed the pigeon that had been cooing and scolding him and walked out of the yard. Things are like this, why don't you cooperate? The pigeon was very loud and angry, coo 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 coo. Although he didn't understand the language, Ji Chang's had reason to suspect that it was scolding him. Good. You are scolding me, right? It doesn't matter. I have a good temper and won't argue with you. Han Qiao and Wang Zhengqiao, go and buy things for barbecue. Let's eat roasted pigeon tonight. Goo goo. The struggling pigeon froze. Seeing that the two students actually obeyed and went out, it was so frightened that it stopped struggling and no longer cursed. Seeing this, Ji Chang's asked, "Can we talk now?" The pigeon nodded reluctantly. Ji Chang's then let go and threw it into the house. Another burst of smoke appeared, the pigeon disappeared, and the middle-aged male ghost appeared again. He really wanted to turn around and run away, but the lair was right here, and this gangster, Ji Chang's, didn't seem to be that easy to fool. He had already died once, so was he going to die a second time? After thinking about it, his life was at stake, and finally he welcomed the three people in again with a bad face. This time, the inside was no longer dusty, cluttered, and even had spider webs everywhere. Instead, it was spotless, clean, and bright everywhere, and there were all kinds of food and drinks on the table, as well as all kinds of electrical appliances. Because they were following Ji Chang's, the two students became bolder and asked cautiously, "Teacher, is there electricity in another dimension? It looks really good here." Before Ji Chang's could answer, the middle-aged male ghost replied angrily, "How can there be electricity? It's so crowded there that you can't even touch the ground. There are no resources. Where can you get electricity?" He died young, in his own opinion. He originally thought that the worst thing after his death would be to disappear, but he didn't expect that there would be something worse than the worst. After his death, he ended up in a place with nothing, just like modern times. Can a person not feel uncomfortable if he wears it in ancient times? Therefore, when I see living people speaking in such a curious and yearning tone, I don't get angry at all. You kids just don't know how to cherish life. You go around trying to die when you are alive. When you die, you will know how precious life is. You come to challenge the haunted house without seeing if your little arms and legs can withstand the torture. The middle-aged male ghost became angrier and angrier as he talked, with a kind of indignation like saying grapes are sour before they can eat them. Because of its ghost identity, neither of the two students dared to talk back, so they could only hide behind Teacher Ji and carefully agree. Ji Chang sat on the sofa and listened patiently to the middle-aged male ghost teaching the two children. He waited for it to finish talking about the topic, and then suddenly realized that he was holding it in the palm of his hand and took a look. Ji Chang's face became indignant again, and he took the initiative to report his family status. "The information I checked before is correct. He was a novel author. He was almost 45 when he died. When he was young, he was too homely to go out and didn't like to socialize. He didn't make many friends. Naturally, he didn't have a girlfriend. He wrote from the age of 25 to 45, from a transparent little street boy to a master-level writer. Although he has countless readers in the novel circle, he still has not made friends because he is used to being alone. Everyday life he just curls up in his room to write novels, read novels, play games, and watch anime, order takeout when he is hungry, and look for his aunt when the house needs cleaning. Although others may think he is living a lonely life, in fact he has always felt that he is living a very nourishing life. Originally, he had already planned his future, and would stop writing when he could no longer write anything. He had accumulated a lot of savings over the years, and when the time came, he would find a good nursing home to live in, where he would still have food, drink, and care. As a result, he stayed up late one night, probably because his body was overloaded and his heart couldn't hold on and stopped working. He didn't even have time to feel the pain, so he just burped. Speaking of this, the middle-aged male ghost felt that he quite regretted it. He has always known that staying up late is not good, that staying up late can lead to sudden death, and that work and rest are unhealthy. Eating takeout for every meal is not a good way of life, but he has always felt that he will not be so unlucky. He is only 45 years old, and he is still in the prime of life. Why? Maybe he will die. Who knows, I might actually die. And because he had few relatives and friends during his lifetime, no one found out even after he died for such a long time. The novels he wrote have countless readers. It stands to reason that readers should have discovered it long ago if he did not update for such a long time. However, he is a cheater. It's common for someone to stop writing a book and disappear for a few months when they don't want to write it. When it's time to write the next book, they'll come back shamelessly as if nothing happened. If a reader asks, they'll pretend to be dead. Anyway, no matter how angry the readers are over the internet, you can't rush out and hit him. Pretending to be dead before seemed very happy, but it would be tragic if he actually died. Old readers have long been accustomed to his disappearance, and they comfort new readers as someone who has been through it. It's okay, this trash is just missing him again, and he will come back when he has a new book he wants to write. Then his body lay silently in the house until it rotted, and was only discovered by others because it smelled too bad. And it himself, no, during this period of time, the ghost found it because he couldn't stand the daily life in another dimension. When he came back, he saw that his home was occupied by a group of homeless people, and he was very angry. He directly pulled them into the illusion he made up, the same one Ji Chang's and the others saw before. The tramps had no intention of finding fault, and were frightened to death. They were pulled into its novel world and became the protagonists in it. I really didn't give them any too scary plot. You said that now that I have become a ghost, I can't watch TV or play with my mobile phone. I can't even read a book. I really don't know what to do if I stay in the house every day. They just delivered it to my door, so I tried to let them act out the plot for me. Who knows, because the books I asked them to act out were all books that I had cheated on, and when I finally left, they were all stuck on the last chapter, and they couldn't stop. I repeated the last action and the last sentence I wrote. Although I was angry, I didn't think about it. I killed people and they turned into ghosts and came to me to ask if I killed them. It was so embarrassing. After struggling for a long time, I really couldn't figure out how to solve this problem, so I took them out and hoped that the hospital could cure them. I'm really unjust. They broke into my house. I'm doing passive defense, okay. There are also these two children. It was late at night when I was sleeping. They came in like thieves. I resisted and didn't come out and scared them to death. They were already very kind. Who knew they would mess with others? Things. He then started to ramble again, saying that he later discovered that he could transform his house through imagination. For example, he could imagine eating an apple. Of course, there would definitely not be a real apple, but it didn't matter, as long as he imagined it just make it taste like apple. Ji Chang's finally heard it. This guy must have been holding back his breath. How could he beep so well? He only asked a few questions, but it had already almost finished chatting its whole life. Okay, stop beeping, you close the door on them, and I will teach you how to make those homeless people return to normal. The middle-aged male ghost was slightly startled. Return to normal? They are not having a normal relationship with me. It is too insincere for you to use this in exchange. You must get something beneficial to me no matter what. Ji Chang's took out his cell phone, searched for it for a few seconds, and then handed it to it. Give me a mobile phone? But my dimension is different from yours, so I can't play with it. He looked at the picture of roasted squab on his phone and his voice stopped suddenly. Ji Changs, do you particularly want to help now? The middle-aged male ghost nodded bitterly. When it was done and went out, it stood at the door and waved to the three of them, "Goodbye, goodbye. Don't come here again. What's wrong with this? Even if you die, you won't be able to live in peace." No, they won't try to fight back. It's still a safe point. Only by standing here and watching them really go away can you feel at ease. Ji Changs glanced back at it and taught the two students next to him with serious words, "Did you see it? Even if we don't get along well, it is reluctant to let us go. It still says goodbye and hopes that we will come back next time. This is the deceased. The world is boring, boring, and never-ending darkness. You must cherish life, you know." The two students turned around and glanced at the middle-aged male ghost who was still standing at the door waving to them even though they had walked so far. The bright lights beside his house revealed a sense of loneliness. Seeing them nodding obediently, Ji Changs took out his mobile phone, found a rooster crow sound effect and played it to them. After listening, the two students' vision was dazed for a moment. When they looked at the originally bright and magnificent house, it had returned to its previous dilapidated and overgrown appearance. Naturally, the middle-aged male ghost could no longer be seen. From then on, they no longer have to worry about a kid suddenly appearing out of nowhere to torment them. If nothing unexpected happens, they will never come into contact with such a thing again in this life, and will wait until they die before becoming a member of the Black Light. Each of the four parents praised Ji Changs for 10 minutes. They even recorded it on their mobile phones and sent it to him. They even sent a shiny golden banner to his home. And it was such a coincidence that when they were frantically thanking Ji Changs at his home, Ji Chang's psychiatrist was rushing over. He felt that his patient's condition was serious, so he actually told him that humans and ghosts are in two dimensions of the same world. In fact, few people can be alone, because even if they hide in a place without people, there is still another dimension. Apiao is looking at him. Ji Changs also said that he felt that his privacy rights had been violated, so he was recently studying a way to scare Apiao from another dimension from appearing at his location. Psychologist. The illness is unclear. Ji Changs refused to come back for diagnosis and treatment. He was also a responsible person. He was worried that something would go wrong, so he hurried over. As a result, he ran into the banner delivery site. The four parents were stunned when they saw him, but Ji Changs remained calm. "It's okay, he is also an insider." Oh. It turns out that he is also someone who knows about things in another dimension. The parents immediately felt relieved and continued to frantically thank Teacher Ji for saving their children from the fire and water. A psychiatrist who listened to ghosts, exorcisms, and dimensions. Waiting until the four parents had thanked them profusely and wanted to leave, he hurriedly followed them out and looked up and down first. It doesn't look like he has a mental problem. Well, may I ask, did Mr. G tell you about another dimension and that people will go to that dimension after death? The parents nodded happily. No, Teacher G is really capable. If it weren't for him, how could our children be so well behaved? Psychiatrist, do you believe it? Everyone in front of him looked at him in surprise. Why don't you believe it? No, don't you think these words are a bit too beyond ordinary people's thinking? What he actually wanted to say was, don't you think Mr. G has a mental problem? However, the psychiatrist's professional ethics prevented him from telling Ji Chang's mental illness without special circumstances, so he could only ask vaguely and implicitly. I think so, of course I do. The four parents looked around and saw that no one was around, then carefully waved to the psychiatrist and whispered to him, actually, we suspect that Teacher G is a kind of hermit master, you know, the sweeping monk, that's what he is. Psychologist. Seeing his expression of being choked and unable to speak, the parents expressed their understanding and patted his shoulders. It's okay. It's normal that you can't accept it for a while. After all, you are just an ordinary person. You will get better slowly. Psychologist. Turning around, Ji Chang's was smiling gently at him. The doctor is here, let's talk. It just so happens that my experiment has produced results. Inexplicably, the psychiatrist had a premonition that he might never be able to cure Mr. G's illness. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 122. When the world ended, Ji Chang's once again chose to continue the mission. When he woke up, he found that he was sitting in a sitting position, with the water glass in front of him still steaming, and the sounds of ridicule and disdain from outside reached his ears. In the end, fighting over and over again is nothing compared to a biological child. An adopted child really regards himself as the eldest son of the Ji family. How can someone like him, who has no knowledge and is jealous of the talented, have the qualifications to be the eldest son of the Ji family? Young master, let me see. He was responsible for the downfall of the Ji family. His biological father didn't want him before, wasn't it because the master figured out that he was a traitor? Looking at his appearance, he is not worried about Mr. Ji at all. How long has he been acting like a young master? Before hearing this, he almost wanted to strangle his younger brother to death, and he couldn't blame Mr. Ji and his wife for giving birth to another biological son. If it were me who had adopted such a thing, I would have been so angry that I would vomit blood. His biological father also had foresight. He is such an unfilial person, tisk. Now that the Ji family has collapsed, Mr. Ji is seriously ill. As the male son of the family, his first reaction is to find his biological father. It is really a waste of time for him to be a son. Mr. Ji and MRSG are so lucky to have raised him so well. Ji Chang's listened silently to receive the information. As he was listening, someone moved next to him and asked worriedly, "Brother Zi, are you okay?" He looked up and saw a plainly dressed woman sitting next to him. She was pretty, about 23 or 24 years old, and her face was full of worry. Ji Chang's responded vaguely, "It's okay." He began to check the memory of the original owner. It is also an era that Ji Chang's has never heard of. It is similar to the Republic of China, and there was chaos everywhere. Now the situation can only be said to be slightly under control. The common people are living a miserable life, but some wealthy families are living well. The original owner was born in a wealthy family, but he was not born to a rich lady, but to his 16th aunt. The 16th aunt was not favored. She didn't get any good food when she was pregnant. When she gave birth, she couldn't invite him because of the family fight. When I came to the doctor, I could barely hold on and passed away after giving birth to the original owner. Although the original owner's biological father had many aunts and children, most of them were daughters. There were more than 20 aunts and a dozen children in the yard, but only 3 were sons, and the rest were all daughters. Therefore, the original owner's son was still caught his eye. If nothing unexpected happens, the original owner should become the 4th young master of the family next. Even if he is not very favored, because of his status as a son, he can still live a better life than most people. But it was also due to family fighting. Originally, there were 3 young masters in the family. One was born to the wife of the wife, and the other 2 were the children of the most favored 3rd concubine. The wife of the wife was chosen by the parents of the original father when he was young. She was dull and dull. If the original owner's father doesn't like him, naturally, the son born will not be liked very much either. The 3rd aunt was too aware that she could be proud of the harem. No matter which son was chosen to be the heir, she would be the final winner in the future. Unexpectedly, an original owner suddenly appeared, and because she had no mother, she got some pity from the original owner's father. She wanted to get rid of the original owner, but because her mother-in-law was still controlling the backyard, she was worried about being discovered. After all, to her, she was jade, and the baby, the original owner, was a stone. It didn't matter whether he died or not, but she would not be hurt if he was injured. All right. After much thought, she chose the superstitious attack. First he pretended to be ill, and then asked his two sons to pretend to be ill. No matter how hard the doctor said, he couldn't cure him. He asked a master to see if there was anything dirty in the house. So, the original owner was naturally stamped as a relative of the K family. The original owner's father was very superstitious. After hearing the news, he not only hated the original owner, but also wanted to send him out to fend for himself. When it comes to cruelty, even the third concubine can't compare to him. But the original owner's grandparents are naturally not happy to throw away a good child like this. Even if the grandson is not born to the wife of the wife, he is still his own grandson. How can he just throw it away? As for bringing people to Zhuangzi, it's not feasible. He is just a little kid, thrown into a strange place, and it's clear that he was thrown away because he was abandoned. How can the people below take good care of him? It happened that the original father's younger brother had no heirs for a long time. This younger brother had already been separated and formed an independent family. Unlike the original father, who was merciful, he was deeply in love with his wife and refused to take a concubine. The two of them had never been together. The children have been married for more than 10 years, and they are almost 30 years old and still have no biological children. In addition, in order to prevent his parents from complaining about his wife, the original father's brother lied and said that it was not his wife's fault that he had no children, but himself. He had some health problems, and the second elder felt that his younger son would probably never have another child in his life, so he found him and asked him if he would adopt the child. Although the couple has always said that having children and not having children are fate, in fact they still like children. They have sought medical advice before and they both said that there is no problem and it may depend on fate. I didn't expect that fate would still be the same when they are already 30. He didn't come, but now that he heard that his brother was willing to adopt this child to him, he naturally accepted it well. Grandpa Ji and Grandma Ji did not hide from their younger son the fact that the original owner had been denounced. However, although the original owner's father's brother gave up literature and went into business, he had been studying Western books and ideas and did not believe in such superstitions. After taking him back, he treated him like his biological son, holding him in his hands and raising him up. It's just that the original owner didn't know if he inherited the cold-bloodedness of his biological father. When he didn't know that he was not the biological child of his parents, although his temper was a little domineering and arrogant, he was okay. When he accidentally found out that his biological father was actually that majestic person, the uncle who worked in the government felt unbalanced in his heart. He ignored that his biological father did not want him first, and then his current father took over. He only thought that if his father had not taken him away, he would now be the son of a government official. The conflict escalated after Ji's mother became pregnant. Although the original owner longed to be his biological father's son, this did not mean that he was willing to give up his father's property. Originally, he was the only one in the family, so the property should naturally be given to him. As a result, the adoptive mother actually had another child and adopted him. Nephew and biological nephew, anyone would choose their biological son. After his anger was known to Ji's father and Ji's mother, they just thought it was because the child was worried that they would no longer love him after having a biological child. They did not take it seriously, but coaxed him well. The two of them were kind to others, so they thought the original owner was the same. However, the original owner was still unwilling to give in. Just when he was about to plan an accident to drop the child from Ji's mother's belly, the Ji family's business ran into problems and the place went bankrupt. Although the Ji family was not said to be a wealthy family before, it was still a small wealthy family and lived very well on weekdays. After going bankrupt, the family's big house was replaced by a dilapidated small house, and the servants who served the family were all after being dismissed. I could no longer afford any good pens, inks, papers and inkstones, nor could I buy anything new for my children at home. The original owner's dream of inheriting the G family was shattered. Overnight, he changed from the eldest young master of the G family to a poor boy whose father was seriously ill, his mother had just given birth and couldn't work hard, and the whole family had to rely on him. Naturally, he couldn't bear it, so he decided to return to his biological father's house. It's just that his biological father felt that he was overbearing, and it must have been because of him that the G family was like this. He refused to see him no matter what, even though he knelt at the door for 2 days, and the door was tightly closed to prevent him from entering. Even though he didn't directly say that he came to recognize his biological father, under Master G's signal, the servants at the gate spread the news everywhere that he wanted to recognize his father. He couldn't recognize his ancestors and return to his clan, and because he turned around to look for his biological father when his adopted parents were in danger, the original owner suddenly became a joke in the capital. In addition, he was arrogant when he was the eldest son of the G family, which offended him. Some people, now falling into the dust, naturally attracted another group of people to laugh at them. Afterwards, the original owner went back, and when G's mother carefully asked him where he had been in the past 2 days, he spoke harshly and blamed them for everything. He bluntly said that if they hadn't taken him away, how could he have been separated from Jingui's eldest young master? Become so depressed. G's father was already seriously ill. After hearing what his unfilial son said, he was so angry that he vomited blood. Even the doctor came later and could not save his life. G's mother also didn't expect that the children she loved when they grew up missed them so much. After raising them for so many years, they actually raised a white-eyed wolf. Coupled with the death of her husband, she couldn't bear the grief, and soon she died. Died in confinement. The original owner simply abandoned the little baby who still needed milk, took the family's money and left without looking back. After that, he became a Hanjian, helping his master and harming many people. The final outcome was not much better. The country stabilized and drove out these foreigners. The Hanjian who were left behind became the best targets for the people to vent their anger, and they died miserably in the end. Quest in this world, change the established ending, please work hard. Ji Chang's wiped his face and wiped away the sweat. At this point in time, the original owner knelt in front of his biological father's door for 2 full days. He couldn't stand it anymore and fainted. His wife sent him to the hospital to save him. That's right, wife. That is, the girl sitting next to Ji Chang's. Her name is Chiao Yuan Huan. She is the daughter of Ji's mother's relatives. This relative helped Ji's mother when she was a child. Later, Ji's mother married Ji's father. Although the two families were divorced. Although they lived far away, they still communicated by letters. Later, during the war, the family was unfortunately affected and the whole family died tragically. Only Chiao Yuan Huan, an 8-year-old girl, was left alive. Before her death, her parents asked someone to send her to Ji's house, and begged Ji's mother to take her in. Ji's mother held her and cried, then kept her, fearing that when she got married in the future, people would bully her because she had no father or mother. Only her aunt and uncle took care of her. After discussing with her father Ji, she made Chiao Yuan Huan the fiancé of the original owner. In this day and age, this is considered a routine operation. If the niece stays at her own home, they will be her niece's parents-in-law in the future. They must not bully her, so that they can always rest assured in the future. The original owner used to like Chiao Yuan Huan as his eldest sister as his wife, but when he grew up and found out that he was not the biological son of the Ji family, he became unhappy. What do you mean, just because he is not his biological child, you give him an orphan who has no father, no mother, no background, and cannot help him in the future as his wife? People usually look for wives for their sons from wealthy families, but they were lucky enough to give him an orphan girl who was 5 years older than him. Yes, Being 5 years older was also the reason why the original owner disliked Jiao Yuanhuan. He got married at the age of 16, and married a 16-year-old. He got married at the age of 16, and married a 21-year-old. If it were someone else's family, they would have already given birth to several babies. In addition, he suspected that Ji's father and mother were not married. Treating himself as his own child, this hostility naturally fell on Jiao Yuanhuan. In the original world, after the house was ruined, it was Jiao Yuanhuan who tried every means to earn money to support his family. After that, the original owner took away the money and left, and Jiao Yuanhuan also raised the infant baby. It's just that she is indeed a hard luck person. When she was a child, she was a wealthy lady, but her family fell into decline. She finally found an aunt who was willing to protect her and married her to her cousin. However, his cousin became more and more indifferent to her. She had a lot of disdain for her, so she finally adjusted and comforted herself that she was older than her cousin, and it was normal for her cousin not to like her. Fortunately, her life was stable now. She just had to be filial to her parents-in-law and take good care of her cousin. Unexpectedly, the family went bankrupt and the family lived a hard life. After my husband made my parents-in-law angry, I raised my brother-in-law alone. After a long time, my brother-in-law grew up and thrived. He was filial, sensible, and obedient. I was thinking that I could have a good rest in the future, but he passed away in pain due to illness. Not able to enjoy any happiness. And her beloved brother-in-law also had to drop out of school and work as a miner because his only caregiver passed away suddenly. His whole life passed in such a blur. In a sense, what the original owner's father thought was true. Wasn't the original owner just a genocide? But this is not the kink of feudal superstition, but the kink of the white-eyed wolf. Ji's father was a truly talented and learned person, and he had many students under his section. Although he gave up literature and went into business, it did not mean that the students were no longer his students. There were still people in Ji's mother's family. In that situation, they could definitely find someone. The only reason why people helped was because Ji's father was seriously ill and Ji's mother had just given birth and couldn't spare any money. Even if it doesn't work, Ji's father can still ask his brother for help. Although when the family was separated, the original owner's father had done something to get all the family property. After Ji's father found out that it was his brother who did it, he left his heart and made peace with his brother. They were at odds with each other. When Grandpa Ji and Grandma Ji were still alive, Ji's father would occasionally visit the two elders. After the second elder passed away, the two of them stopped having much contact with each other. But this time the Ji family suddenly fell. It was suspected that Mr. Yuji had done it. Although they have no contact and may still be enemies, they are still brothers after all. If he really puts down his dignity and asks his brother for help, if Mr. Ji doesn't help, other people's spittle will drown him. This is why Ji's father was able to tolerate his brother's murderous intention against him. He had no evidence. If he said this and his brother accused his brother of harming him, if he was not careful, he would be accused of being framed. Ji's father was arrogant and couldn't do anything to directly force his brother to give him money. He just wanted to take care of his illness and write letters to several of his students after he recovered, and these students would naturally help him. If Ji's father could recover from his illness at that time, he could still make a comeback. However, the original owner directly made the two of them angry to death with unconscionable and cruel words. Otherwise, this family would not be in such a state of decline. Brother Zi, don't be too sad. Jiao Yuanhuan, who was standing next to him, didn't speak for a long time after seeing Ji Chang's, thinking that he still wanted to take back his biological father's name. He cautiously persuaded him, since uncle doesn't see you, forget it. Aren't your parents also very good to you? Now that my father and mother are seriously ill, I will feel uncomfortable if I know that you are going to see your uncle. Let's go back. Ji Chang's picked up the water glass on the table and blew on it and took a sip. Do you also think that I want to claim my uncle's name back? Chiao Yuan Huan said nothing. She married Ji Chang's when he was 16 years old. Now 2 years have passed, and although she has not been able to get close to her husband until now, she is still someone who knows him a little bit. She knew that he had always respected and admired his uncle, and knew that he regretted not being able to be his uncle's son. There was a time when Chiao Yuan Huan thought that even if her husband was raised by his parents-in-law, in his heart, his biological father was still his uncle. As someone who was loved by Ji's mother as her biological daughter, Chiao Yuan Huan naturally felt chilled for Ji's mother and couldn't imagine how uncomfortable she would feel if she knew about this. But although she guessed it, she never said it out loud. Chiao Yuan Huan knew very well that even if she said this kind of thing, it would not change anything. It would only make Ji Chang's and his parents-in-law separate and make the two elders sad, so she could only hide it carefully and occasionally try to trick them. The relationship between. She stopped talking, and Ji Chang spoke firmly, "Don't worry, it was my parents who raised me in the first place. Even if I admire my uncle, my parents in my heart can only be my parents, and my uncle can only be my parents' uncle." Hearing this, Chiao Yuan Huan was slightly stunned. "Then, what do you want to do when you go to find your uncle these 2 days? Isn't it what she suspected, that she wants to become her uncle's son again?" Ji Chang's, "Of course I have other things to do." "Okay, let's drink. Let's go to the uncle's house again." After he finished speaking, he stood up and went out, looking at a few of his peers who were chatting and laughing opposite. Those few people originally came over to drink tea and chat about the latest gossip while they were free. Unexpectedly, while the gossip was going on, the person involved actually appeared in front of them. They immediately stopped talking and stood stiff without embarrassment. He looked at Ji Chang's. They thought that the domineering eldest young master of the Ji family would definitely overturn the table. Unexpectedly, Ji Chang's just glanced at them and walked out as if nothing was wrong. Chiao Yuan Huan was angry that they said bad things about her husband, but she was good-natured and didn't say anything and walked out with her husband. These 18 or 19-year-old men sat there for a long time without reacting. One of them said, "That one just now was Ji Chang's, right?" "Yes, and his wife is with him." "What's going on? We just said that to him, and he wasn't angry? Didn't you hear that he had a bad temper before? He must be angry but afraid to get angry at us, right? Now that his family is in decline, he is no longer the eldest young master of the Ji family. How dare he offend us?" After the man finished speaking, the people next to him still felt that something was wrong. "It's not right either. Although the Ji family has fallen, we just said this to him. If he makes a big fuss, then others will definitely think that it is us who are wrong. They all have a good reputation. He's not afraid of us taking revenge on him." A group of people looked at each other in confusion. They really didn't know what the situation was. At the same time, they felt a little embarrassed. In fact, they are not very familiar with Ji Chang's, but they heard that he was very arrogant in the past, and they also heard that he knelt in front of his biological father's door every day for the past 2 days. As a result, no one even looked at him, thinking that he was so. The behavior of abandoning the adoptive parents when they were in trouble was really outrageous, so he started scolding them. If Ji Chang's had been angry at them just now, or scolded them directly, they would have scolded him back very confidently, and they would have despised this person even more in their hearts. As a result, Ji Chang's did nothing now and didn't even look at them. Instead, they felt guilty in their hearts. This Ji Chang's doesn't seem as rude as the rumors say, not to mention that it's not the behavior of a gentleman to talk about people behind their backs. Ji Chang's over there went directly to his biological father's door and knelt down with a thud. Seeing that he was back, the concierge stepped forward to chase him away again. "Come on," our master said, "since you have been adopted out, you have nothing to do with our family, and he will not see you. Ji Chang's acted as if he hadn't heard anything. He knelt for a while. When there were more people watching the fun, he shouted loudly in front of the people coming and going, "My nephew wants to see my uncle. I want my uncle to see my nephew, help my father." As he said that, he pulled Xiao Yuan Huan beside him. "Mother Huan, you also kneel down and beg uncle to help our family." Before Xiao Yuan Huan figured out how to recognize her ancestors, she asked her uncle for help. She knelt down in confusion and listened to her husband next to her wailing. "Uncle! My father and you are brothers. Now my father is seriously ill and my mother has just given birth. If it weren't for the fact that the family couldn't afford the money to buy medicine, my nephew wouldn't be so shameless as to come to you. Please, uncle. Just help my family. Even if you had a dispute with me before, he is your biological brother." Xiao Yuan Huan understood this time and hurriedly shouted, "Uncle, please help our family, please. For the past 2 days, the original owner has been kneeling at the door asking to see his uncle. He also knew that people would scold him if he abandoned his adopted father and came back to recognize his real father, so he just said he wanted to see him, not the reason, nor the blood relatives, and others would naturally understand. Now he suddenly said that he was here to ask for help, and the gatekeeper was stunned. The people watching the excitement around were also a little confused. It turns out that Master Xiaoji has been kneeling for 2 days not to recognize his biological father, but to borrow money. Why did his uncle's servants say before that he was here to recognize his father? Look at Ji Chang's pale face, shaky figure, and pitiful look in his eyes full of pleading and despair, and combine it with what he said before. Tisk, blood relatives have had disputes. Could it be that Mr. Ji didn't want to help his brothers and deliberately spread rumors that Ji Chang's wanted to recognize him? Although Ji Chang's was carrying the crowd on his back, his ears still worked well. After waiting for almost 5 minutes, he estimated that Mr. Ji in the yard would get the letter and go this way, and the onlookers behind him also began to follow what he just said. He spread out, then stood up unsteadily, and smiled miserably at Xiao Yuan Huan, who was supporting him with a pale face. "That's all. Since I couldn't change my uncle's mind after kneeling for 2 days, I'm afraid it will be useless even if I kneel for another month. Huan Niang, let's go back." Xiao Yuan Huan was frightened by his pale face and helpless expression, and hurriedly supported him. Ji Chang's just left here in front of everyone, weak, powerless, and sad, being supported by his wife. Many people looked at him with sympathy. The eldest son of Mr. Ger's family was in such a miserable state. He knelt for 2 days without getting any help, and was even rumored to want to abandon his adoptive father and claim his biological father. The eldest master of the Ji family is so cruel. Just because he doesn't want to help his brothers, he can actually think of such a harmful move. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, CleverProtagonist. Chapter 123. Ji Chang's not only pretended to outsiders, but also pretended to be real to Xiao Yuan Huan. He could be as weak as he wanted, but he could still maintain the illusion of being weak and unable to move around and asking his wife to support him, while at the same time keeping his feet steady. Xiao Yuan Huan was not overwhelmed. His acting skills were so lifelike that Xiao Yuan Huan was convinced. His face was full of worry. "Brother Zi, are you feeling weak from kneeling for the past 2 days? How about I take you to the medical clinic in front to have a look?" "Don't." Ji Chang's face was pale, and his eyes wandered around the crowd watching the excitement. He showed a bit of strength on his face, pursed his lips, and his voice was obviously weak, but the volume was raised enough that the people around him could hear. "Don't let anyone see the joke. Let's go back directly." Even if my father is ill now, there is still a man like me at home. No matter what happens, we have to stand up straight. That would be fine if it weren't for what he said next. With those words added to it, how could the people who had been watching the excitement in front of Mr. Chiao's door and followed him all the way to watch not know who the person Ji Chang's was talking about? He's not the uncle who disregards brotherhood and throws dirty water on his once son and now nephew in order to be fair and upright. Ji Chang's was born well and young, and his character as a scholar was still highly valued nowadays. He showed his arrogance on the street, and the people just watched it, but the scholars praised him from the bottom of their hearts. Although the eldest young master of the Ji family used to be unspectacular, and even heard to have a somewhat arrogant temperament, now that the family regards him as the eldest young master, his temper is naturally coquettish. But after all, he is still young, otherwise he would not have been splashed with dirty water for 2 days in vain. Ji Chang's coughed a few times weakly, and when he saw the well-dressed people around him, his eyes filled with sympathy and appreciation. He thought it was almost done, so he stopped without staying any longer, and met Jiao Yuan Huan who was supporting him. Went home together. But it was precisely because of his short stay that some people appreciated him even more. Being able to endure such humiliation without saying anything bad about Mr. Chiao shows that he is an upright person. But think about it, Mr. Chiao was very knowledgeable at first. It was only after the family split that he got involved in business. But even if his subordinates were doing business, even if the students he taught did not have any amazing future, he had already gotten ahead of himself, so how could Ji Chang's, who had grown up under his own tutelage, do any worse? After Ji Chang's made such a fuss, he was able to clean himself up for a short time. It was easier to deal with Ji's father and Ji's mother. Both of them could not go out at the moment. Only Jiao Yuan Huan was around to take care of her. Before, I feel that my husband went to his uncle's house because he wanted to go back. He was afraid that the elders would be sad and kept it secret from them, so they didn't know about it for the past 2 days. He didn't hide it directly. After returning, he went directly to Ji's father's bedside and knelt down. Then he said with red eyes that his son was unfilial. He had been counting on saving our family for the past 2 days, so he ran to find his uncle. Unexpectedly, after kneeling for 2 days, he didn't even see his face, let alone lend you money. Buying medicine has made people laugh enough. Although my son is 18 years old, before he only focused on studying and having fun with his classmates, and never got involved in business. Now he really doesn't know what to do. Jiao Yuan Huan didn't expect her husband to be so honest and tell the story of the past 2 days directly. She was worried that her father-in-law would be angry, so she quickly looked over. As a result, when she looked over, there was no anger on Ji's father's face in the hospital bed. Instead, he looked angry. Somewhat distressed. In addition to feeling distressed, there is also some guilt hidden deep in my heart. He had been lingering on the sickbed for the past 2 days and had never seen his son come to see him. He had some suspicions in his heart, but he never asked them out. In addition, the uncomfortable expression on his daughter-in-law's face when he pretended to mention it occasionally, with his son's admiration and yearning for his uncle, Ji's father became more and more sure of his thoughts. Ji's father knows better than anyone what a child who has been raised by his own children is like, especially his son's attitude towards Mr. Ji. Ji's father can see clearly. But in the past, what he thought about was that the child was young and had been spoiled since he was a child. He didn't know anything. Later, he saw clearly what his biological son looked like over there, and knew that he didn't care about him at all. He should have known what was going on, but he didn't expect this disaster to happen suddenly. Ji's father guessed that Ji Chang's went to see his eldest brother, and he was still a little disappointed. He knew that it was normal for children to have admiration for their biological parents, but now was the most difficult time for the Ji family, and he was still bedridden. Madam has just given birth to a son and has raised Nagasawa for 18 years. Can't she let him take care of and comfort them at this time? Ji's father suffered in his heart for 2 days by himself. His illness, which was originally controllable, got a little worse. He was so depressed that he couldn't even get out of bed. As a result, his son came back and told him that he went to see his uncle, but not to ask for recognition, but to ask for help from his uncle. The anger that had been stuck in his heart for the past 2 days suddenly dissipated. Especially when he saw Ji Chang's looking lost and disappointed in his eyes, he whispered to him that he had heard that his uncle was a brilliant man and a serious government official serving the country. He didn't know how much he admired his uncle in his heart. He didn't expect that. This time, when something happened at home, I discovered that my uncle was not even willing to help his brother when something happened to him. Damn it, my eldest brother is probably responsible for what happened this time. If others don't know about Ji Feng Jiu, don't Ji Fu know about it? Although the two are brothers from the same father and mother, in Mr. Ji's heart, the younger brother is not there for brotherly love, but to share the family property with him. Looking back, the age difference between the two is more than 10 years. The teenage Master Ji has long been accustomed to having only one young master in his house. He also naturally believes that the family property, parents' love and affection belong to him alone. As a result, Ji's father was born. He is not the kind of concubine who can be dismissed casually, but a serious second son who can divide the family property and the love of his parents. No one knows when Mr. Ji became crooked. Anyway, Ji's father liked to be close to this brother when he was a child. He expected his brother to take him to play, and worshipped his brother who was more capable than him. He only grew cold after suffering a few losses. He is different from Mr. Ji. Mr. Ji never worries about whether his parents will be sad when he attacks his younger brother. But Ji's father is worried that his parents will not be able to bear the brothers killing each other when they are old. In addition, he is not as ruthless as Mr. Ji. He was very interested in literature, so he developed into literature, and only started to engage in business after the separation of the family. As a result, he finally managed to build the current family property, but a disaster happened from the sky, and the property went bankrupt all of a sudden. Ji's father has a clear heart, so he came here specifically for him. Although his previous family property attracted people's attention, who else but Mr. Ji would have such a reason to take action? It's not just because he wants to make money. No matter how good-tempered a person is, he will be offended if he does this, but now he feels quite happy in his heart. Although most of it is bad news, isn't there also good news? Look, the child he raised with his own hands has finally seen the ugly face of Mr. Ji, and he will no longer be as envious as before. And Nagasawa knelt at the door and said something like that before. In addition, he also said that there were many people watching the excitement around. It is estimated that today, Mr. Ji watched his brother die and his nephew knelt in front of him. The news spread throughout the city that he refused to help after 2 days of begging at the door. He had never beaten his elder brother in a fight before, but he didn't expect that Nagasawa, who he had raised by himself, would let him fall into the trap today. Cool. So cool. Ji's father glanced at his son who was kneeling in front of his bed with a look of loss and remorse, and coughed. He felt a little better after getting the good news, and actually let him sit up halfway with his body propped up. He sat down and reached out to help Ji Chang's. Good boy, get up quickly. Now that something is happening in our family, you went there because you wanted to help. I can't blame you. Seeing that Ji Chang's face was still full of pain and anger, he sighed again. Actually, Dad didn't explain many things clearly to you before. Your uncle, There was a bit of sadness on his face, but he showed no mercy at all. He told all the things Mr. Ji had done before, of course, in a more tactful way. For example, your uncle had just gotten married and your father and I were still a child. Maybe it was because your grandparents looked at me because I was young and loved me. He was unhappy and was not very friendly to your father and me. He even pushed me on purpose on a rainy day. I almost disfigured me, and then went to your grandparents to bite me back. I was young and didn't know how to defend myself at the time. Looking back later, I'm afraid your uncle has never taken me seriously since then. Brother watched. After finishing speaking, I would like to add one sentence, but it may be that your uncle was young and did not know the importance of things. Time has passed, and I don't want to blame him, etc. No matter how young you can be, you were already married at that time. A married brother actually deliberately pushed his biological brother who was still a child. This shows his character and character. G's father's words not only revealed Mr. G's trashy character, but also created a great image for himself as a glorious person who didn't care about his brother. Otherwise, it is said that the literati can talk. As soon as he talked like this, the eldest brother who couldn't play with him before turned into a man who cared about the fraternal relationship and was unwilling to make an enemy. Anyway, he just said how pitiful and pathetic he wanted to be. After saying this, Ji Chang's face showed a bit of indignation. He said angrily, "Thankfully, I secretly admire you. It turns out that your uncle is such a person. Dad, why didn't you tell your son earlier? If you had known that he had been like that, I will definitely not give him a good look towards you." Father Ji was happy. He had wanted to use eye drops for a long time, but after all, the other person was Nagasawa's biological father. When his adoptive father said such things, it seemed as if he was jealous of his biological father and son and said bad things behind his back. And applying eye drops behind his back is not something a gentleman would do, but this time he was seriously ill, and many things were different in G's father's heart. In addition, looking at his son's aggrieved and lost look now, he would be in trouble if he didn't strike while the iron was hot. Too stupid. Ze has witnessed with his own eyes what kind of person his eldest brother is. Shouldn't he seize the opportunity to take eye drops? Otherwise, such a good opportunity would be wasted. Opportunities are fleeting, so grab them if you can. He said very helplessly, "After all, he is your biological father. Although he wanted to send you away because of a monk's comment, you admire him so much, how could you have the heart to say it as a father?" Yes, that's right, that's it, to tell the truth about the eldest brother not wanting Nagasawa in such a subtle way. Sure enough, Ji Chang's looked greatly shocked and asked in disbelief, "Uncle ever wanted to send his son away?" This reaction suited Ji's father exactly. He was excited and tried hard to show a bit of regret on his face, with an expression of, "Hey, why did I just say this? I shouldn't tell you this." Ji Chang's was indeed anxious and kept asking what was going on. Ji's father couldn't shirk, so he utterly helpless told what had happened. Of course, it has undergone some polishing and processing. For example, Mr. Ji first started thinking about it after hearing the words of his beloved concubine. In Ji's father's words, he immediately worried about Ji Chang's himself, and at that time, he planned to throw Ji Chang's into the Zhuangzi and be killed. The old lady stopped her and went to Jifu, which turned into your mother, and I heard about this, and thought about how a child like you could survive being thrown outside in such a chaotic situation, so we went to find it your grandma. He also described very emphatically how cold-blooded and ruthless Mr. Ji was when Ji Chang's was taken away by them. He didn't even look at him. How Ji Chang's cried loudly when he was still a baby. His cries made people cry. But in the end, Mr. Ji did not come to see off his son who would become his nephew in the future. Father Ji still has integrity. Although there is a little artistic processing, most of it is the truth. It is just that through his own description, he vividly portrays the cruelty and ruthlessness of Master Ji. Ji Chang's cooperated and showed an even more disappointed look. Then he said the words that Ji's father wanted to hear most, "I didn't expect that my uncle was such a person. If I had known it earlier, my son would not ask for him. Father, you are so kind to take care of your illness. I will never ask for him again. He will not worth. Hey, mother, these words made Father G feel as comfortable as taking a sip of ice water in the middle of summer. Although the family has fallen into decline, now the whole family is united, and that is stronger than anything else. My heart felt comfortable, and my body felt much better than before. Especially Ji Chang's opened the window to let the room have some ventilation. He no longer had the arrogance that he had been used to, and instead spoke with a little calmness about the future at home. With him, Ji's father will be better off if he lets his father take good care of his illness and not worry about it. When he saw Ji Chang's go out, he was still thinking in his heart. Although Chang's was a little naive and had no worries about food, clothing, and care since he was a child, it was not without its benefits. Look, he won his son back in just a few words. Alas, he is still a sword. But Nagasawa is still too coaxable. As soon as Ji Chang's went out, Chiao Yuan Huan came up to him and asked nervously, "Brother Zi, how is Dad? You won't be offended by your uncle's disapproval of his popularity." "Dad is fine. I chatted with him and he seems to be in much better spirits now than before." Ji Chang's really didn't expect that the old man would be settled by him in just a few words. This old man is quite easy to coax. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 124. After hurriedly entering the house before, and now that he had coaxed the old man, Ji Chang's began to take a closer look at what was going on in the yard. How should I put it, in the memory of the original owner, this yard was naturally very shabby and dilapidated, but in fact, compared to for ordinary people, it is already a house that they cannot buy even if they work hard for a lifetime. Now Ji's mother was in confinement, and even though he was her son and a man, it was still difficult for him to enter, so Ji Chang strolled around and sat on a chair in the yard. The yard was not very small, and the sun was warm inside. Ji Chang's felt a little sleepy while staying there. When others are sleepy, they want to sleep, but he was sleepy because he wanted to do something. After thinking about it, he turned around and asked Chiao Yuan Huan, "My family was moving in a hurry before. Did I pack my pen and paper?" He said this shamelessly in a hurry. After all, when the Ji family suddenly went bankrupt, the original owner was in a daze. When he moved, he just stood aside like a mascot. Not to mention helping to pack things, he even got into the car with Chiao Yuan Huan helped him up. Chiao Yuan Huan didn't mean to reveal her husband's past. After hearing this, she immediately responded, "It's packed in the West Room. Do you want Brother Zi to use it? I'll bring it to you." "No, why bother you with such a trivial matter as getting a pen and paper?" He stood up and gently held Chiao Yuan Huan's hand, with emotion on his face. "Before, I didn't know anything. My parents were looking forward to me, but they only cared about having fun. At that time, Sister Huan, you were filial to them for me. Now at home, I was in trouble, and I couldn't bear to be in a daze for a while. It was Sister Huan who helped me hold on. You and I are husband and wife, and I shouldn't have said thank you separately, but now, I really want to thank you." Chiao Yuan wanted Huan Zi to marry him, not to mention holding hands and speaking seriously. In the past, Brother Zi didn't even look at her, and every time he went back, he only looked at her parents' face. Especially the title Huan Ji. Ever since she got married, she has been called by her parents-in-law. The husband basically doesn't call her her. Although it doesn't matter if he doesn't call her, other couples have never seen their husbands call their wives their nicknames before they got married. It's just Chiao. After all, Yuan Huan grew up in Ji's family, so it stands to reason that he should be more affectionate. Now seeing Ji Chang solemnly thanking her and calling her Sister Huan, his eyes full of seriousness, she felt happy and ashamed, and said softly, You also said that we are husband and wife are one, isn't it what I should do? Even so, I can't take it for granted. Sister Huan, don't worry. I was ignorant before. I will definitely work hard in the future to let you and your parents live a good life. He said these words solemnly again, and then said to Chiao Yuan Huan, I'm tired from taking care of my parents these past 2 days. Go inside and have a good rest while I write something. Ji Chang's estimated that this girl was very tired. Ever since the Ji family had an accident, the 2 elders above her fell down. Her husband, who was supposed to support her, didn't care at all. The family didn't have enough money, so she had to do everything by herself. It would be strange if she wasn't tired. Chiao Yuan Huan didn't feel tired at all. Seeing her husband looking at her with distressed eyes, her face turned slightly red and she said with some embarrassment, then I'll go to mom's place to see you. If you want to eat or drink, just call me. It had been a while since they got married, but this was the first time Brother Zi cared about her. She was so happy, but couldn't show it, so she walked briskly into her mother-in-law's house. In the room, Ji's mother was carefully feeding her little son. When she saw her coming in with a shy face, her worries about her lack of milk disappeared a little. She smiled and asked Chiao Yuan Huan, what's wrong? I haven't seen you like this for a long time. I'm so happy. Although they are now mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, Chiao Yuan Huan grew up clinging to Ji's mother. In her heart, Ji's mother is no worse than her own mother. When asked, although her face was still full of embarrassment, she still with a bit of joy, she told Ji's mother what Ji Chang's had just said to her. By the time the retelling was over, his face was already red. She touched her hot face in embarrassment and said to Ji's mother, Mom, Brother Zi hasn't spoken to me like this before. It shows that he is really grateful to me today. The smile on Ji's mother's face had not fallen since she heard it just now. Seeing Chiao Yuan Huan say this, she even smiled from ear to ear. She gently put her little son down and said with a smile, You silly girl, you are still the same as expected young man. Brother Zi is not just thanking you, he is keeping you in his heart. Seeing her niece and daughter-in-law looking at her with confused eyes, Ji's mother smiled and analyzed with her, most men want to save face. Sometimes even if they are thinking about something in their hearts, they don't show it on the surface. It's just for the sake of face, unless if you are forced to do nothing, you will not show weakness easily. I know Brother Zi, he is also a face-saving person. Now that he has taken the initiative to apologize to you and said such words, he must have kept you in his heart, otherwise, he wouldn't say anything even if the knife was held to his neck. She reached out and held Chiao Yuan Huan's hand, with a relaxed smile that was rare in these days. I have always been worried about you in the past, and I felt that marrying you to Brother Zi, who doesn't know how to love others, is delaying you. Now I can feel at ease. The two of you were childhood sweethearts and failed to develop any feelings. Now that something unexpected happened in the family, Brother Zi knows how good you are. Seeing how good you are makes me feel at ease. After understanding what Ji's mother meant, Chiao Yuan Huan's face turned redder, but there was also a bit of joy on her face. Who doesn't want her husband to take her into consideration? Now that Brother Zi is willing to treat her well, she is naturally very happy. The two women in the room were talking affectionately, but Ji Chang's outside found paper and pen. The paper was good paper and the pen was a fountain pen. He sat in the sun and thought for a few minutes with his pen in hand. When he raised his hand again, the pen was already writing. Ji Chang still used the original author's handwriting, but it was a little more steady and free-spirited than before. By the time the sun went down, he had already written 2 chapters of the novel. Yes, novel. This period was relatively chaotic, but the two were still the same in the early days, either civilized or military. Now the Ji family has a seriously ill father, a confinement mother, and a newborn baby. It is definitely not possible to leave them all to Qiao Yuan Huan. In addition, there is another person outside who has just been ruined. No matter how exhaustive his strategy is, Ji Chang's cannot 100% defend against Master Ji, who is staring at him from a distance. It's much simpler if it's written. Wherever you can't write, you can write how you want. Even if a vest causes trouble, this is not modern. People who check people also have ID checks. As long as they find a reliable place to cooperate, he can change as many vests as he wants. And it's easy to find a reliable place to distribute books. Isn't there a student of Father Ji in the city, his senior brother? This senior brother is not here at the moment. He went to another city to do business long before the incident happened to the Ji family. Before leaving, he came to visit Ji's father and explain the date of his return. Calculating the time, it was almost within the next 2 days. Although Ji's father didn't have many students, and most of them were not famous, they all had one thing in common, which was that they had a good relationship with this teacher. It seemed like no one was helping Ji's family when something happened this time, but that was because of Ji's father. Father's students are all out of town, and the only local one is still out on business. Even if one of them is here, Ji's family can be properly accommodated and not be in such a hurry. This is because the news is not circulating now. We just need to wait. When the news gets out, I am afraid those students will rush to the teacher to help. In the evening, people sent by Mr. Ji came, carrying money all the way in a very flamboyant manner. Because the battle was huge, many people came with them. When the man who delivered the money saw Ji Chang's opening the door, although he was smiling, he was still a bit arrogant. He kept saying that my master has been in poor health recently, and the ignorant servant did not dare to disturb him, so he made Ji Chang's, the nephew, kneel down for 2 days. Today, the servant saw the young nephew walking away, so he was afraid. He went to report it, and the master hurriedly sent him to deliver the money, hoping that the young nephew would not get into trouble with the servants. He should be arrogant. After all, the Ji family was in decline, and what they gave was money. If the Ji family knew about it, they should be grateful. Then he was scolded by Ji Chang's with a sullen face, using words without any curse words but full of lethality. Let me start by saying that you locked me out when I went there, and now you see me making a big fuss and say things like this. Even a 3-year-old wouldn't believe it. He also said that it's okay that you were unwilling to lend a helping hand before. Even though we are brothers, no one owes anyone anything. But now that you are making such a big fanfare, you can't wait to send such a sum of money with lights and decorations all the way. You can't wait for the little ones to know that you have given it to them. Got us some money? Nowadays, the old and young in my family are poor. If I had money, it would be worse than a child living in the bustling city with money. Not only would the money not be kept, but someone might take away their fate. Even though I am young, but he's not the kind of person who doesn't know anything. Since the uncle doesn't want to help, it's okay. Why do he need to do something that is obviously helping but actually causing trouble? After finishing speaking in one breath, he said angrily, "Our family also has a backbone. It's better for the two families not to interact with each other in the future." After saying this, he slammed the door. The person in the lead was stunned for a moment. He came here with such a big fanfare just to let everyone in the city know that their master is not the kind who doesn't care about brotherhood, and this money was delivered in front of so many people. When Ji Chang's accepted the money, it would mean that now the people in the city what Mr. Ji said about not caring about his brothers is bullshit. The same goes for not accepting money. They gave it away, but Ji Chang's didn't accept it himself. How could it be that their master didn't care about his brothers? It was a good situation, and their family would be well off regardless of whether the other party took money or not, but the Ji family would either feel aggrieved if they took the money, or they would feel aggrieved if they didn't take the money. Before coming, he had praised his master in his heart that he was worthy of it. It's the master, he's awesome. As a result, I was so proud along the way that I never expected that the problem would be thrown back when I got there. They were obviously here to give money, but when it came to Ji Chang's mouth, it turned out that they were not well intentioned. The point is, what he said makes sense if you think about it carefully. So it was embarrassing. Give me money, I just don't have good intentions. If you don't give me money, I won't be able to clean up my reputation. And they can't blame Ji Chang's who refuses to accept the money. After all, people have said that accepting the money at this time is like a child trying to live in a busy city. If you accept it, you will die. Can they still force others to accept it? After waiting at the door for a long time without any embarrassment in front of the onlookers, the man opened and closed his mouth, stretched out his hand to knock on the door and then took it back. He stood there for a long time, not knowing what to say. He looked at the people who were attracted around him, looked at him wrongly, so they could only grit their teeth and leave with a group of people with a dark face. It's really strange. Hasn't this young master been overbearing and careless since he was a child? Now look at it, it looks like a fox. Fox Ji Chang's locked the door, worked up his emotions for a while, turned around and went to Ji's father's room with a face full of grief and anger. Then started crying with him. Why are you crying? His uncle is not a human being when he cries. Dad, look at it, he is clearly hurting us now. He wants to kill our family. We are obviously brothers, but he is going towards the fatal place with his knife. I was really blind back then. I admire this trash like him, Daddy. My son almost died of anger outside just now, but he didn't know how to retaliate, so he could only scold them and shut the door to prevent them from coming in. Dad, they are taking advantage of your illness to bully our family. He must have known that my son, was not good at words and did not like to quarrel with others, so he deliberately sent that arrogant and well-spoken person here. He was going too far. After whining for a while, Ji's father was immediately aroused to fighting spirit and anger. He was okay no matter how much he was bullied, but that trash actually dared to bully his son. Do you want to be shameless? An elder comes to bully a junior. He is a shameless person. The more Father Ji thought about it, the more excited he became, and his energy level improved a little. He patted his son's shoulder sympathetically and comforted him with words such as, "Don't be afraid that Dad is here, and don't worry, Dad will definitely find the place back." Ji Chang's nodded with a grieved face, "Dad, please get well soon. You haven't seen how they bullied me in the past 2 days. I was so uncomfortable that I couldn't say a word." The feeling of being needed by his son was like a shot in the arm. Although Ji's father was not in good health before, his spirit was even worse. Now he was radiant and energetic, as if he could go to the battlefield with just one needle. "Don't worry, Dad will still protect you, and you will get better soon. You're a bunch of bastards." Taking advantage of his illness to bully his son, you really see that he used to be too kind and easy to bully, right? He was able to build a family business on his own, but now he can't build another one. The old father's fighting spirit was ignited. Now they are bullying Nagasawa because he is young and not good at words. In the future, he will ask them to kneel down and apologize to Nagasawa. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 125. In the past few days, Ji Chang's has been taking care of his family, writing articles and waiting for the newspaper's senior brother to come to his door. Ji's father and Ji's mother saw that their eldest son, who was once arrogant and did not listen to his parents, became much calmer after experiencing this incident. Although the family was in a downturn, Nagasawa was much more sensible than before. Not only did he know how to be filial to his parents, he also knew how to be considerate of his wife and do dirty work. Chiao Yuan Huan was not allowed to do any work, and even personally served the two elders with decoctions. They thought to themselves that this was a blessing in disguise. Although the family is not as good as before, After experiencing this disaster, the relationship between the family is much better than before. Ji's mother was full of satisfaction, but Ji's father was a little worried. Although Nagasawa is much more sensible than before, he has been pampered since he was brought up, and he still can't stand alone. Didn't Nagasawa just know how to deal with it before seeing the person coming from Mr. Ji? It was also his luck that he drove people away accidentally. But he was lucky this time. What about next time? Nagasawa had been raised without knowing anything about the world, and Ji's father didn't trust him at all to take charge of his own affairs. Because of this worry, he has been much more active in taking medicine during this period than before. Although he still has no strength, he still works hard to sit up and move his hands and feet. With motivation, he feels better faster than before, and he actually feels better. Let him slowly become more energetic. When Ji Chang's senior brother who worked in the newspaper came back to the city and got the news, he was full of sadness and worry. He imagined the teacher lingering on the hospital bed, coughing and dying. Unexpectedly, when he was led to Ji's father's room, what he saw was he was sitting on the edge of the bed with a serious look on his face, holding 2 bricks up and down in his hands. Looking at Father Ji's face, although it can't be said to be rosy and good-looking, it definitely can't be called sick. The sadness and worry in his heart suddenly choked him. Teacher. When Ji's father heard this uncertain call, he turned around and looked at the door. When he saw it was his student, he smiled. Why are you here? From the looks of it, you just came back from doing something, right? Seeing that Ji's father was talking and laughing as usual, with no trace of sadness or anger in his expression, he felt relieved, sat on the bedside and said, "Let me see you." This student's name is Lu Qingru. He is one of Ji's father's students who is less engaged in literary career. Because he lives in the same city as Ji's father, he comes to Ji's house the most. Before he joined the newspaper office, Ji's father helped him find someone to entrust him. Relationship. Now that he has a high status in the newspaper office, didn't he rush here as soon as he heard that something happened to the teacher? Unlike the worried students, Ji's father was still there. After talking to the student for a few words, he calmed him down and asked him to write a letter to contact several of his senior brothers and sisters who were engaged in business. After saying that, he looked up and saw his eldest son looking outside. He smiled again and said, "During this period, Nagasawa said he wrote something and wanted to send it out. I thought he was also detained in the yard by me. I'm so bored. Go check it out later. If you think it's good, send it to him. If you think it's not good, don't coax him for my sake. Just tell him." Lu Qingru nodded in agreement, and looked back at Ji Chang's, sighing. After a few months of separation, Chang seems to be more stable than before. He didn't like to write articles in the past. Speaking of his eldest son, the smile on Ji's father's face never fell. Ever since something happened at home, he has stood up. He was looking for solutions before, but now he finds that the family has become like this, and he also wants to make money to support the family. I know where he heard that writing articles can make money, and he writes every day. Although I know that his literary talent is not good, I am satisfied knowing that he has this intention. Lu Qingru knew that this junior brother was not only poor in literary talent, he had not liked studying since he was a child, but now he was able to concentrate on writing, which showed that he really wanted to support his family. Of course, he definitely couldn't tell the teacher this, so he still boasted. Nagaze didn't pay attention to it before, but it was taught by the teacher after all. Now he is willing to study hard, and given time, he will definitely be able to make something achievement. Lu Qingru himself knew that this was a compliment, and Ji's father also knew clearly that the student wanted to make him happy. He smiled and lifted 2 bricks again, and said while exercising, "It's fine if you lie to me, but don't follow me like that." Nagasawa said, "What if he believes it to be true? Take a look at his manuscripts and take them if you think they are good." If you think they are not good enough, don't worry because I won't tell him. Young people should be more frustrated. Lu Qingru agreed, but in the bottom of his heart, he thought that no matter how his junior brother wrote it, even if he wrote a bunch of xiang, he would take it away properly. The teacher has always refused to accept their money, and he used to let it go. Now that the teacher's family is in trouble, he has to help out no matter what. With this in mind, Lu Qingru chatted with Ji's father for a few more words before going out. As expected, Ji Chang's gave him the manuscript. Before he read it, his mentality was like, no matter what my junior brother writes, I will praise him. However, as soon as he read it, he completely forgot what he was thinking before. Ji Chang's writes novels about cultivating immortals. It tells the story of a poor boy who accidentally embarked on a journey to immortality. The novelty is that this poor boy is from the Republic of China. Ji Chang's uses the first-person pronoun and his name is Memoirs of Cultivation to Immortality. In other words, this is a story about a poor boy cultivating immortality in the Republic of China. Although it is made up, the real background used by Ji Chang's makes it easy for people to believe that the I in this book is real. This is not a novel, but a true memoir. Ji Chang's didn't consider any emotions when he wrote this book. He just went for money, so the more popular the book, the better. The more people like it, the better. Naturally, it will be satisfying. Lu Qingru couldn't help but immerse himself in it as he watched it. It wasn't until he saw the last page that he woke up from a dream. This was not a real memoir, it was just a novel written by his junior brother to make money. Although he thought so rationally, he still felt deep in his heart. Feeling in a trance, he reluctantly put down the manuscript in his hand and asked Ji Chang's, is this really written by you? Ji Chang's looked extremely proud. Of course it's me, senior brother. What do you think of what I wrote? Can you send it out and sell it for money? Lu Qingru looked at his junior brother with extremely complicated eyes. How should I put it? I originally thought that my junior brother was a fool. After all, as a senior brother, he knew exactly what Nagasawa was like before. He had never studied it properly. But now that he has become serious about his family background and writes like this, that's why I wrote such a good manuscript. Lu Qingru himself was in control of the manuscript he submitted and could already tell very clearly whether it would be popular or not and whether it would make money. Even he was immersed in the manuscript written by Ji Chang's. After reading it, he was still reluctant to read the next chapter. It will definitely be popular. At the same time, because he read too many manuscripts, he became more aware of how difficult it was to reach Ji Chang's level. You must know that this is not the future where everyone goes to school. Nowadays, most people in China cannot read, and there are many who can read and write good articles, but it is difficult to write articles that most people like. This is the first time Ji Chang's writes a manuscript and he can write like this. Even if he is not a talented player, it is impossible. Lu Qingru was quite excited and happy to discover that his idiot junior brother was actually a good young talent. On the one hand, it was for the sake of the teacher. He knew very well how profitable the novel could be if it was written well. Now that Ji Chang's writing is so good, the teacher's family is in financial crisis. But won't it be lifted? On the other hand, it is also for himself. If the novel written by Nagasawa becomes popular, their newspaper will naturally follow the sales increase, and he, the person who discovered Nagasawa, will naturally have a higher status in the newspaper. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. Lu Qingru carefully put away the manuscript and asked Ji Chang's, what pen name will you use to publish it? Have you thought about it? People nowadays basically use vests to post this kind of articles. Ji Chang's also knew this. He took out a piece of paper from his pocket, unfolded it and handed it over. This is the pen name I prepared. I still don't know which one to choose. Would you like my senior brother to help me choose one? Lu Qingru looked at the piece of paper in front of him with at least 100 names written on it. You are quite well prepared. Ji Chang's waved his hand. I plan to use all these pen names. Lu Qingru. He looked at the 100 or so names in his hand and almost threw the paper on the ground without shaking his hands. Are you going to use them all? So many. Ji Chang's also had a reason. It's a mess now. He only uses one pen name and can easily become a target. He might as well get more and write different things. If any pen name offends someone, he can just abandon the account and run away. As the saying goes, if you want to be successful in the world, you must have a vest. This is Ji Chang's. He has a quick brain and a quick hand. He can write about people of all ages. He can withstand a little more armor. Lu Qingru was stunned after hearing his junior brother's great idea. Is this a little more? Most people only have 7 or 8 pen names at most, but he has about 100. However, at this moment, Lu Qingru was not very familiar with Ji Chang's hand speed. He only thought that his junior brother had never been exposed to manuscript writing before, which was why he was so whimsical. He thought that in the future, when his junior brother writes more, he would naturally know that writing books is not easy. He should be cautious when opening a new vest and keep his head down. I chose a relatable name. How is Shen's? Needless to say, Zi, Shen and Lu Qingru thought that before, their junior brother only knew how to play around, but now that something happened at home, he started to work hard, hoping that he could always maintain such good qualities. Ji Chang's liked all of the 100 or so names he had, and nodded after hearing this, then just listened to senior brother and use Shen's. After talking for a while, the excitement in Lu Qingru's heart has not calmed down. Of course, it cannot be ruled out that most of the excitement was caused by entering the protagonist while reading the manuscript. He couldn't help it and went back to Ji's father's room. He couldn't hide his excitement and praised Ji Chang's in front of Ji's father. Teacher, you don't know, my junior brother is really talented. The manuscripts he wrote are really beautiful. I think he can be popular. He will definitely be popular. Before, you said that my junior brother didn't have any literary talent if he didn't study hard. Now it seems that his talent is clearly in writing novels. In short, it was blowing in the east and west. What impressed Lu Qingru was that no matter how he played, Ji's father always looked calm, without even a hint of surprise on his face. He immediately fell into thinking. Could it be that the teacher already knew what the junior brother was capable of? Otherwise, how could he have such an unsurprised expression? No wonder, he said that with such ability as the teacher, how could he possibly teach his junior brother to become a playboy? As expected of a teacher. And just as he was thinking this, Ji's father sighed in his heart. This kid told him not to prescribe H0 Yumi and to Nagasawa for his sake, but Lu Qingru not only prescribed it, but also praised Nagasawa in various ways to reassure him as a teacher in order to comfort him. Hey, so what if he praises Nagasawa to heaven? He knows his son Amoruofu, doesn't he still know what Nagasawa is capable of? Lu Qingru over there thought it through. Seeing that the teacher was so calm, he was embarrassed to make such a fuss, so he quickly calmed down his expression and calmed down. Seeing him like this, Ji's father confirmed his suspicion. If Nagasawa was really as powerful as he boasted, could the student calm down so quickly? Hey, forget it, it's the student's intention, so let's not expose it. Lu Qingru also sighed. The teacher deserves to be a teacher, he still needs to learn more. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 126. After Lu Qingru returned, he made arrangements to cut out the most attractive parts of the manuscript given to him by Ji Chang's and put it in the Rowan daily where he worked. Originally, there were still people in the newspaper who questioned it, but Lu Qingru had no intention of slapping him in the face. If anyone questioned it, he would show the manuscript to others. After reading it, he would naturally stop talking. After being in the newspaper office for so long, Lu Qingru was so full of praise for Ji Chang's that it was not because of the teacher's son filter that he published this Memoirs of Immortal Cultivation. He was full of confidence. Soon, Memoirs of Cultivation to Immortality began to be serialized. Nowadays, it is not uncommon to add novels to the back of newspapers. What is strange is that the author of the novel attached today is a person who has never appeared. The third son of an old medical doctor likes to read Rowan daily as much as his father does, but his father likes to read the various major and minor events above, while he always reads the novels at the end. Today, as usual, his father read the front side of the newspaper first and put it down with satisfaction before he picked up the newspaper. The youngest brother in the family had been waiting for a long time. When he saw him picking up the newspaper, he immediately came over and said crookedly, "Third brother, can you also read it to me while you are reading it?" The youngest brother has just started studying and does not recognize many words. He is also used to being pestered to read novels every time. After listening to him finish reading, the youngest brother will show off to his classmates. He was very happy to be part of the show-off, but his brother's dignity prevented him from showing it. Instead, he nodded rather reservedly and said, "Then don't make any noise that affects me. Don't look like last time, it didn't work like that." "No, third brother, I promise not to make any sound." Only then was he satisfied, and sitting behind the table, the old man, the head of the family, frowned slightly while listening to the conversation between the two brothers. The old doctor doesn't like his children to read novels. He thinks it is not serious. Although there is no need to read the 4 books and 5 classics now, reading medical books is better than these novels. He couldn't stand it, and when he wanted to scold the two brothers, the third son over there had already started to read. "Why did you publish this article in Rowan Daily?" "Because I am from Rowan. I was born in an ordinary family. I can't remember much about my childhood. I only remember that there were 7 younger brothers and sisters in the family. There might have been a famine at that time. Every day at home, there was only crying because of hunger. The younger brothers and sisters cried very loudly at first, but then the voices became smaller and smaller. One day, the second brother and the 7th sister disappeared, and another day, the 3rd and 4th brothers were nowhere to be found. I asked my father and mother, but they looked pale and only told me that my younger brothers and sisters no longer had to go hungry. Until one day, I dug up tree bark and came back. I guarded it carefully all the way, and kept swallowing for fear that I would not be able to eat it. I just wanted to send it to the mother who had just given birth to my sister, so that she could eat it. I had milk to feed my sister, but as soon as I returned home, I saw my little sister, who had never had enough to eat since she was born, with a pale face, was carried out of the house by her father, found a land, dug a hole and buried her, without making a grave. I moved a big stone to press it up, and there were 5 big stones lined up next to the big stone that had just been moved up. Only then did I know that they were dead. I didn't know that at that time, but I don't know it now. We'll embark on a road of immortality." This beginning immediately attracted the attention of old doctors. They dig tree roots, starve children to death, dig holes to bury children and put rocks on top. These slightly older people all know that it is true. At that time, too many people were starving to death. As a doctor, the old doctor clearly remembered how many people came to him for help. When he heard this, he couldn't help but feel that it was a real person. When he heard about the immortality behind it, he was immediately stunned. Immortality? What immortality? Can people still be immortal? The third son was so frightened by the old doctor's voice that he stopped talking. He also knew that his father didn't want to see him reading novels, so he stopped and looked at the old doctor in confusion. Seeing this, the old doctor became anxious. Watch what I do, and continue reading. The third son hurriedly continued reading. This memoir of cultivating immortality written by Ji Chang's takes advantage of the first-person voice throughout and the fact that Ji's father is beside him, a know-it-all. At this time, there was no information explosion like in later generations. Many things were heard by ordinary people or read in newspapers. If it's not published in the newspaper, they won't know about it. But the I described by Ji Chang's has been wandering around in the southeast and northwest since he accidentally embarked on the spiritual path. He wrote a lot of things that really happened in reality, and described in detail I's behavior when the incident happened. What the mentality and I did. For example, last year, there was a thunderstorm in the east, which lasted for many days. The sky was filled with thunder and lightning. At this time, there was not much awareness of lightning protection. Many people were killed and even appeared in the newspapers. Ji Chang's wrote in the novel that I had just embarked on the path of spiritual practice. Since I didn't have a master to guide me, I had to rely on myself. I could only explore a little bit. One day, I felt something in my heart and felt that I was going to make a breakthrough. It happened to be a thunderstorm day. These thunderstorms are very important to ordinary people. Speaking of danger, it was a boost for him as a cultivator. He dove in and made a breakthrough. He waited until the sky cleared before leaving with satisfaction. Before leaving, in order to thank God, he even made a slap mark on the ground with all his strength, hoping that if there are monks like him who come to this place in the future, they can gain some insights. There were palm prints, but they were struck by lightning and looked like palms. They were about the size of 10 people standing together, and they were also published in newspapers. Ji Chang's wrote it like this, making it seem as if the palm print was really taken by I. At least many people who read the novel felt excited after reading it. This is also a move that Ji Chang's has learned through extensive research. In later generations, there is a word called hype, and it is usually male and female celebrities who hype to attract popularity. And Ji Chang's is amazing. He also speculates, but he speculates with the thunder and lightning in the sky. With such speculation, doesn't the heat rise? When the third son finished reading, he happened to stop at the most exciting part. The old doctor had been excited before, but seeing him stop, he quickly urged, "Keep reading, hurry up." When he heard his third son say that it wasn't that he didn't miss her, but that he was gone, the old doctor was so anxious that he only patted his thigh. How come this Rowan Daily only publishes so much? Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 127. Not only old doctors think so, but also many people who have read memoirs of a cultivation of immortality think so. In the past, when they saw the serialized manuscripts, they would always cut off the most exciting parts like this. At that time, they would just let it go if they cursed twice, but it was not like it's like this now. After I put down the newspaper, I was scratching my head and wanted to read it. The key point is that even if you want to read it, you can't. The Rowan Daily has always been such a pisser. What's more, even if the newspaper is willing to let go, it can't fit so many articles in the newspaper. For those who are relatively calm, the worst they can do is hold the newspaper and read it a few more times. Especially the parts that are enjoyable to read must be carefully recalled. After all, Ji Chang's is here to make money, and if he wants to quickly enter the market, he naturally has to write as exciting as possible. People say 3 chapters are a small point, and 20 chapters are a big point. Ji Chang's is amazing. He has 3 small happy points in one chapter and 1 big happy point at the end. There are really not many novels nowadays that are specifically aimed at being happy. Even if they are happy, they will only be happy later after the protagonist has developed. Most of the other novels are somewhat realistic, and occasionally they use novels to criticize certain things. The author of something. Ji Chang's admires these authors very much. When he studied the novel system of the Republic of China these days, he read it every day. In fact, most authors wrote things not just to make money, but to express their true feelings, or to use pens to satirize something, or maybe I hope to use the articles I write to expose the illusion of peace today. However, the things published in newspapers now cannot be too blatant. Otherwise, newspapers cannot bear the responsibility and will never publish them, so they can only write implicitly. The sad thing is that most people who buy newspapers cannot see the implicit expression of the author. After all, most people nowadays are illiterate, and most of the literate people only know a word, so this results in 90% of the some people can't see it, and 10% of those who can see it remain silent. Ji Chang's could see it, so he admired these authors even more for their willingness to stand up in this situation. After all, the article was published directly in the newspaper for the public to see. If it was discovered, it would definitely be a target. He took out his backup list of vests and picked out a vest, planning to use this vest if he published similar articles in the future. When submitting articles, I look for newspapers that have people behind them. As long as they get in, even if something goes wrong, the newspaper will not be implicated. If something goes wrong, no one will know who they are as soon as they lose their vest. When he makes enough money and stabilizes the situation at home, he can then feel free to go on a big adventure. The more he thought about it, the more beautiful it became. Ji Chang's put away his 100 or so vests and continued to write. He is lazy and plans to write a month's worth of manuscripts in one go, and then do something else this month. Lu Qingru had no idea that his junior brother was a tentacle monster. Even though he was excitedly listening to people saying that Rowan Daily was going to sell out like crazy, many people couldn't wait for the newsboy to come to the newspaper office to buy newspapers, and they didn't even think about urging Ji Chang's to update. Someone at the bottom said, "Many people came to our newspaper office and asked if they could put more of Memoirs of a Cultivation of Immortality in it. It just wasn't enough. They also said that if we were willing to put more of it, they would definitely buy our Rowan Daily every day." Lu Qingru was very stable, since they have said such things, even if we don't publish more, they will definitely still buy our newspapers. But I saw that they were pressing hard and said they were willing to pay extra to buy it, but the bottom was blocked. It's not enough to rush them. If we feed them in one go now, will they still buy newspapers in the future? Lu Qingru, the old god, was there and continued, "Besides, Shen's has something going on at home, so how can he spare the time to write a manuscript? Just the same, little by little. Then what if these people come upstairs? They heard that Shen Ziyi submitted his manuscript directly to you, but they keep making noises to find you." Lu Qingru lay back leisurely and took a sip of tea. "Just say I'm not here. If they still press, just say I went to Shen's house to press for the manuscript." As soon as these words came out, although everyone was dubious, they were a little calmer than before. It's embarrassing to say that they are no longer children after all, and now they are making such a fuss over a novel. But this novel looks really strange, isn't it just a novel? How could they look at it and make their blood boil with excitement? Someone came out of the newspaper office and met an acquaintance. The acquaintance didn't read novels, and he was very puzzled by them making such a fuss. Now that he saw someone he knew, he felt a bit of ridicule in his confusion. "Why are you making such a fuss? How old are you? Why are you still acting like a child? You are not afraid of others seeing you laughing?" The man. He held the newspaper in his hand, rolled his eyes, and took the idea into consideration. He chuckled and leaned over and handed the newspaper in his hand to the acquaintance. "You will know after you take a look." "Let me see? What should I see?" The acquaintance didn't take it seriously, but he couldn't help but brush the other person's face, so he took it over and said while looking at it, "I never like to look at these things. If you show me, I can't see anything." You'll know just by looking at it, the man encouraged, looking at the acquaintance's hand holding the newspaper with distress, and said with heartache, "Be careful when you take the newspaper, I have to take it back and keep it. It's just a newspaper. Look at you like this. If you damage it, I'll just pay you a copy." After the acquaintance finished laughing at him, he lowered his head and continued to read the newspaper. As he read, the indifferent attitude on his face gradually disappeared and gradually sunk in. After watching it, he felt so refreshed that he couldn't wait to watch it again. The person waiting next to him saw that he had been standing there for a long time without saying a word and asked, "You haven't finished reading yet?" "I'll look at it again." The man immediately gave up and grabbed the newspaper to protect it. "If you want to see it, buy it yourself." "I haven't decided yet." The man thought the same thing. There is a newspaper office in front of him. Isn't it easy to buy a newspaper? He squeezed in, finally pushed his way to the front and said he wanted to buy a newspaper, but someone said, "I'm sorry, sir, today's newspapers have been sold out." "Sold out? Why do you say it's sold out? How long has passed?" "In the past, even if you came to buy a newspaper at dusk, it would definitely cost a lot." This person is not the only one who has such doubts. Nowadays, reading novels is not accepted by the elders. Except for those famous authors, other novels are considered by the elders to be inferior to studying hard. Therefore, it often happens that the elders reprimand the younger ones for wasting time by reading such things, and the younger ones are not convinced and bring the newspapers to the elders, or read them to the elders. And if they were reading outdoors, more people would hear it. Coupled with the word of mouth spread, "You benefit me and I benefit you," and the newspaper office was immediately crowded. Some people left disappointed after hearing that the newspaper office said it was sold out. Before the people at the newspaper office could breathe a sigh of relief, another group of people who wanted to buy newspapers arrived, and they almost became repeaters. "Sorry sir, the paper is sold out." "I'm so sorry." "Sorry sir, there are no newspapers." The people who received them were exhausted, but the whole newspaper office was so happy that they wanted to go to heaven. Everyone knows that these people who cannot buy newspapers today will become the main buyers tomorrow. Now that they have increased the number of newspapers tomorrow, you can imagine how much more money the newspaper society will make. Everyone looked at Lu Qingru with admiration. "Where did you find this, Shens? Our newspaper office has not been so lively for a long time." Lu Qingru was happier than them, but he did not forget to take the opportunity to benefit his junior brother. "Don't worry about where I dug it out from. Now that Shens alone has made our newspaper sell in excess of demand, do we have to pay him the royalties, more than before? It wouldn't be appropriate if it were the same as others." The boss of Rowan Daily is money-oriented. He relies on his father, who has some power behind him, to run the newspaper. It is precisely because his father is so outstanding that the boss always wants to run the newspaper well and impress his father. Let others know that the tiger father has no dog son. Before, the newspaper had been tepid, not profitable but not very popular either. He was dissatisfied. Now that Shens had made the supply of their newspapers exceed demand, he was happy and said to Lu Qingru, "You and Shen Ziyi should discuss the terms carefully and be more generous." Lu Qingru knew their boss well, and when he said he was generous, he meant he was truly generous. He was overjoyed. No one knew better than him how profitable writing manuscripts were. The boss was also generous, so I'm afraid the teacher's family would no longer be worried about being short of money. When this novel is finished, I will print it as a whole book and sell it. I am afraid I will make more money. He happily prepared to go to his teacher's house to tell them the good news, but when he looked down from the window, he saw that it was still densely packed with people. He had no choice but to wait until dark and the people dispersed before leaving. While Lu Qingru was waiting to find Ji Chang's, the discussion in the city about memoirs of a cultivation of immortality was still going on. In one school, A student bought a newspaper. After reading it, he generously circulated it to everyone. The teacher hadn't come yet, so everyone was chatting enthusiastically. Do you think this is Mr. Shen's true memory? No way, isn't it written in the first line? The content is purely fabricated. Shouldn't we take it seriously? But this is too real. Look, it says that he once encountered a fire when he was a child, and the sky was red. However, the local newspaper did not report it at all, as if this incident did not exist. Many people don't even know about it. The area he mentioned was where my second uncle was doing business at the time. I remember he told me that there was a fire there, but many people don't know that unless they are careful. ZE is a local, otherwise how could he know about this? Someone raised a different opinion. If you say that, then didn't Jens also write clearly about the hail in the original county? Someone suddenly asked, could it be that this is really a memoir of cultivating immortals? These things have been experienced by Jens. He is really a cultivator of immortals. Otherwise, how could he know so much? Look, foundation establishment, consecration, fusion, heartbeat, golden elixir, yuaning, there are many more. If he wasn't a cultivator, could these be made up by Shen's himself? It's also a credit to Ji Chang's that he didn't know what they were thinking. If he knew, he would laugh out loud. Didn't he just write in the direction of although I say this is false, you will feel it is true when you look at it? No matter what age it is, most people long for immortality. Even if Ji Chang's writing is only 8 points good, after they figure out this is a memoir written by a cultivator of immortality, the 8 points will become 10 points. 1 pass to 10 and 100 to 10. It's no wonder this novel isn't popular. If someone comes to Ji Chang's directly, he can put on an innocent face and say, "Hey, are you serious? How could it be? Didn't I write a letter at the beginning saying whether it was fiction or not?" Quite perfect. When it got dark, Lu Qingru knocked on the door. It was Ji Chang's who opened the door. Lu Qingru now looked at Ji Chang's as if he were looking at a golden egg. Before he could speak, an affectionate smile appeared on his face. "Nagaze, have you gone out today? You don't know that your novel is popular." Ji Chang's nodded calmly. Instead of being happy that his novel became popular, he thanked Lu Qingru first. "I also want to thank you, senior brother. If it weren't for senior brother, it would be difficult for me to publish it even if I wrote it." Lu Qingru sighed when he saw his expression of "I had expected that everything would be under my control. After all, I still underestimated this junior brother before. Think about it, these students who were taught by the teacher should not be said to be among the best. After all, they all have successful careers. How can the teacher's son be any worse?" Because of Ji Chang's calmness, Lu Qingru didn't want his junior brother to think that he was making a fuss, so he tried to calm down and said with a smile, "The big boss of our newspaper knew about this and asked me to negotiate the price with you. I want you to stay in our newspaper." After saying that, Lu Qingru patted his bag, looked around and saw no one outside, and then said mysteriously, "I brought all the real money and silver. Don't worry, I am your senior brother. If you have any requests, just tell me. I will go to the big boss again. Senior brother tells you that as long as the request is not too excessive, the big boss will definitely agree." Ji Chang smiled. "I used to just play around, how could I understand this? I submitted articles because I knew in my heart that my senior brother is taking care of our family. I regard my senior brother as my elder brother. I only dared to know that you would not let me suffer in this case. I don't know what to do if we communicate with the newspaper. Why don't we talk to my father?" These words made Lu Qingru feel warm in his heart. Although he didn't expect any reward for helping the teacher and his family, he was happy to hear his junior brother's affirmation and gratitude in person. Doing good deeds is based on voluntariness and concern for the teacher, but this does not mean that he does not want to hear people praise him for being filial to the teacher and taking care of his juniors. He is happy to do good deeds in obscurity. Knowing that others are watching what he does, he also feels that he is doing good things in his heart. Okay, that would be even more enjoyable. Lu Qingru felt herself drifting off, and said cheerfully, okay, I'll go talk to the teacher. The teacher is a veteran, so Nagasawa cannot be disadvantaged. He has not forgotten Ji Chang's indifferent look before. It is conceivable that the teacher, who has seen a lot of the world, will be the same. As a student of the teacher, how can he look like he has never seen the world? So when he entered, Lu Qingru deliberately controlled the expression on his face to appear calm, making sure that the teacher would not think that he was impetuous and would get carried away by trivial matters before walking in. Ji's father was still sitting on the bed, but this time he was reading a book. He was surprised to see the students coming. Haven't you just been here? Why are you here again? The expression on his face was normal, it didn't look like something big happened. By the way, he must have wanted to give them money by taking advantage of his eldest son's writing of the manuscript. Ji's father estimated that this was the case. While he was pleased with the student's filial piety, he also thought that it would be okay if he refused for a while. Others didn't know about Nagasawa, so didn't he know? What's more, the situation at home is not that serious. It's just that his illness is a little more troublesome. He is no longer in his 80s. When he gets better, he can still do a lot. Father Ji sat quietly, waiting for the student to finish speaking and refuse. Lu Qingru sat on the bedside and said as expected, "Teacher, I have sent out Nagasawa's manuscript and it is very popular. Hey, I don't even know how to make up lies. How can I be popular at Nagasawa's level? Lu Qingru, our big boss specifically asked me to keep Nagasawa. No, he gave me a lot of money just to let me win over Nagasawa and only let him publish articles in our newspaper. Look, what he said, he brought money and made up a big boss. This kid really thought he was sick and confused." Although Lu Qingru had known for a long time that the teacher was calm and expected everything, he did not expect that the teacher would remain unmoved when he told such two pieces of good news. There was even a hint of "I knew it" in his eyes. He was immediately in awe. The teacher deserves to be a teacher. As a student, he couldn't be too impetuous and let the teacher think that he was not steady at all. Thinking about it, Lu Qingru coughed dryly and started pouring silver dollars from his bag. The silver dollars fell onto the bed with a clatter, almost blinding Ji's father. Ji's father had thought before that the students would definitely support them out of their own pockets, but he never expected that Qingru would actually get so many silver coins. Where did he get so much money? Ji's father was not the kind of person who sucks students' blood. He immediately frowned and straightened up and waved his hands. "No, I don't want it." Lu Qingru immediately gave Ji's father an "I understand" look. "Teacher, I understand what you mean. These silver coins are really too little for Nagasawa's ability. Don't worry, our big boss is very rich. These silver coins are just I told him who bought those manuscripts that if Nagasawa's next book is still as good as it is, we will calculate it according to the share, and then the money will be even more." Ji's father. Why do you think this means that this money was really not given by Lu Qingru? Nagasawa earned it? No way, does that kid have this ability? Lu Qingru continued, "Teacher, you don't know. Today, there are a lot of people in our newspaper office, clamoring to read the content behind Nagasawa's novel. I also said before that Nagasawa doesn't like reading, he just likes to play around. No matter what, you knew he had this ability. But think about it, Nagasawa was young and didn't have to take care of the family business, so you naturally didn't want to restrain him. Now that you are sick, Nagasawa can't do it. Did you stand up all of a sudden? Father Ji, is that so?" He paused for a while and then said, "Show me Nagasawa's manuscript." "Teacher, How did you know that I brought a newspaper? You are so awesome. I don't think I will be able to learn like you in my lifetime. Ji's father. He asked Lu Qingru to bring over the manuscript written by Ji Chang's. Lu Qingru took out the newspaper from his arms that he had planned to go home and review several times and handed it to Ji's father. Ji's father glanced at the student, took the newspaper and read on. This is remarkable. He knew that Nagasawa was writing a manuscript before, but from the bottom of his heart he didn't think his son could write any good manuscripts. However, he was very happy that Nagasawa was motivated, so he didn't say anything. As a result, he was confused when he saw the manuscript. Was this written by my son? My eldest son, who only knows how to eat, drink and have fun, doesn't care about anything, does anything he can't do, and is always trying to take the first place. He had never written an article before, but when he did, it turned out to be so beautiful. Ji's father was stunned for a few seconds before he realized what he was doing. My son is a genius. Fortunately, he was used to keeping his emotions and anger a secret, so he didn't lose his character as a steady teacher. Lu Qingru next to him made another sincere rainbow fart. Teacher, why are you not in a hurry and still playing with bricks? It turns out that you know Nagasawa's ability and know that even if you are sick, Nagasawa will be there. Ji's father. No, he played with bricks because he was anxious to exercise and get up early to support the family. And it wasn't just playing with bricks. The foreign book Nagasawa read said that he did it because it could quickly restore his physical strength. Lu Qingru continued to brag. I said that when I praised Nagasawa, I thought you would be very happy, but I didn't expect you to be so calm. I guessed at that time that you must have already planned to know your son better than your father. I'm afraid that even the sensation caused by this manuscript after it was published, and the enthusiastic love of everyone, teacher, you also expected it, otherwise you wouldn't have been so calm when I said it. You have also expected the importance of the big boss. Yes, I still remember the calm look on your face when you listened to me just now. Father Ji, who had just decided that the student was lying to him so that he could help his family. He turned around and saw that the admiration in the student's eyes almost burst out. He looked down at the newspaper in his hand again. Why does it feel so like a dream? Ji's father has taught students, so he can naturally tell that although Ji Chang's manuscripts are not gorgeous in rhetoric, and even have a bit of vernacular meaning, it is definitely a shortcoming in an article, but it is definitely an advantage in a novel. Could it be that he really underestimated his eldest son before? Is it true that Nagasawa used to be able to play around just because he was a father at home, but now that something happened at home, he immediately stood up? Could it be that Nagasawa's talent really lies in writing novels? He didn't write before because his family was not short of money, but now when it's time for him to shine, his talent and skills come out. It seems nonsense, but if you think about it carefully, it makes sense. Lu Qingru next to him was still bragging that the teacher was worthy of being a teacher. Father Ji was really embarrassed to say that he had actually been distracted before, so he coughed dryly and returned the newspaper. Sitting upright, with a calm face, there was a hermit demeanor in his tone. It's good to know. You should learn more from me. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 128. Lu Qingru left, leaving behind a bag of silver coins. As soon as he left, Ji's father couldn't pretend anymore and called Ji Chang's into the house and asked him about writing a novel. Ji Chang's was still like that. When asked, he said that he had liked reading novels before. Ji's father recalled the colored novels he had collected from his eldest son. The reason why he didn't write before was because he could still be free and happy without writing. Ji's father recalled the eldest son's happy old days. Now he writes about the fact that he has to shoulder the responsibility of supporting the family. Ji's father remembered that he had tried to encourage his son to work hard through various kinds of supervision. No matter how hard he tried at that time, Nagasawa always acted like he should. He didn't take his old father's words to heart at all, and would sometimes get angry with him, which made Ji's father think that the child was useless. As a result, he failed to teach the right direction in co-writing. Fortunately, he always thought that he was good at teaching students, but he couldn't even teach his son well. Ji's father was embarrassed in his heart, but he definitely couldn't say ha ha ha, so that's how it is, then the way I taught you before was wrong, so he straightened up his face and smiled faintly at Ji Chang's. I've known for a long time that Nagasawa is a talented person. I didn't say anything to you before that you like to have fun. Now that you have become serious, I will keep the money I earned in your hands. But you can no longer go out and have fun with those bad friends like before. You have to think about the environment. Sister Huan has taken care of me and your mother without any complaints these days, you should think of her well. Ji Chang's nodded in agreement. Don't worry, Dad, after the accident in our family, my friends stopped interacting with me. They either avoided me or laughed at me when they saw me. How could I go to look for them to play with? It was just a group of people who got together to have fun, and there was no real affection. In addition, the original owner had a bad temper and was not very generous. Most of the good friends in the past were at odds with each other, but now there is something wrong with the Ji family. It would be nice if they didn't add insult to injury on this matter. How could they still be laughing at Ji Chang's like before? Ji Chang's knew it deep down and was not surprised, but his words immediately changed their meaning when his father heard them. He thought about the pitiful appearance of his eldest son being laughed at and ridiculed by his former friends, and felt heartbroken. Although he used to dislike Nagasawa for shouting, but in fact, as a young man, who is not the one who calls friends, he scolded him a few times. But at that time, although Nagasawa said that he was not good at homework and articles, he was not good at appearance. It's not nice to call friends and be friendly. Now that the family is in decline, although Ji's father feels a lot comforted by the fact that he is sensible, what child doesn't want to remain innocent and be free to do whatever he wants under the protection of his parents forever? After all, it was him, the father, who failed to protect his child. He felt distressed, but Father Ji's paternal love made him feel better again. By the next day, he was walking around. And Ji Chang's novel has also begun a long serialization period. It still maintains the happiness of 3 exciting points in 1 chapter and 1 big exciting point in 3 chapters. It is also mixed with many things that people don't know now, as well as the protagonist's judgment of the situation. Slowly it became more and more popular. Ji Chang's kept busy writing for a while, then just finished writing the novel. He handed the remaining manuscript to Lu Qingguo, who knew that he had finished it in one go, and his face was blank, and started writing his second novel. The first vest was positioned to make money. Now that the money has been earned, Ji's father is in high spirits and preparing to make a comeback. The second vest no longer has to be focused on making money. This time he did not write an exciting article like Cultivating Immortals, but wrote a supernatural article, a self-narration of a soldier who died on the front line. Before writing it, he followed Lu Qingguo's path and got a lot of information on the front line. Of course, that there are definitely no such secrets, but there are still some things to eat and drink in the past. Ji Chang's was already very good at editing. He was almost as good as building a tall building if someone gave him a foundation. He was so powerful after getting the information. He stayed in seclusion for a few days, and when he came out, he handed Lu Qingguo a stack of manuscripts. Lu Qingguo has been shocked more and more times recently, and each time it was because of this junior brother. As the editor-in-chief, he really couldn't figure out why someone could write a manuscript so quickly, not to mention that the quality of the manuscript was high. I finished writing it in a short time, and the second book will be out soon. Seeing his junior brother indicating to him to read the manuscript, Lu Qingguo didn't have time to think deeply about the question, is my junior brother an octopus, so he lowered his head and read it carefully. He was still immersed in it, still fascinated by it, but what was different from watching Memoirs of a Cultivation of Immortality was that when Lu Qingru raised his face again, the ends of his eyes were red. He looked at the junior brother in front of him complicatedly, feeling that admiration was no longer enough to express his feelings. However, Ji Chang still acted as if nothing had happened. He took out a page of his spare vest and asked Lu Qingru to help him choose this time. What vest to use? Lu Qingru chose one of the vests with a complicated expression, Mr. Dongliu. Ji Chang's nodded, smiled, and said to Lu Qingru, I still have to trouble my senior brother for this manuscript, so I will use the name of Mr. Dongliu. Lu Qingru agreed, and when he left, he went to see the teacher. He sighed to Ji's father who was trying to do push-ups, Teacher, how did you teach Nagasawa? Although the words he wrote were not gorgeous, but it really makes people immersed in it and makes it easy for them to empathize. Even I can't resist it. This is more than just a talent. Ji's father was confused. What the hell? It's just a compliment when you come up. Although his heart was full of what did you say, but because he was an elder and could not lose face in front of his juniors, Ji's father still coughed and stood up from the ground calmly, You are my senior brother, don't praise him all the time. This kid is still young. If you praise him too much, you'll feel arrogant and it won't be good. The main reason is that it's embarrassing that he can't always answer the phone. Lu Qingru couldn't understand what Ji's father was thinking, and suddenly realized, the teacher said that Nagasawa is still young, and I won't praise him in front of him in the future. To be able to achieve such an achievement at such a young age is worthy of being taught by a teacher. He left with an expression on his face, my views on teachers and junior fellow students have been refreshed a little bit today. Once the students left, Ji's father, who was extremely curious, endured the scratching in his heart and went out to ask. Ji Chang's, what did he and his senior brother say just now? Hearing that the new manuscript was given to Lu Qingru, Ji's father, no matter how curious he was, could only endure it until the next day and ask Ji Chang's to go out and buy a copy of Rowan Daily for him. Rowan Daily is a bit of a thief. They want to make money from the newspaper and money from selling books, so after Ji Chang's gave the full text, they thought of this way. The books will still be sold, and the price will be higher. But it is something written by Mr. Shen's, so it is certainly worth it. If you don't want to buy books but want to read novels, you can buy newspapers. Our newspapers are very cheap. As long as they are not the kind of people who cannot afford food, they can afford it. Of course, although it is cheap, people who buy books cannot enjoy the same treatment as you who buy newspapers and read free novels. Therefore, in the future, the content of Memoirs of a Cultivation of Immortality in newspapers will be reduced by half. Half will contain new novels. There is nothing wrong with newspapers doing this, and many people understand it. After all, if newspapers still publish a story every day as before, then people who buy the book will feel less comfortable spending money to buy privileges. After all, before the book comes out, everyone this is the way to follow the serialization. If it were changed to only play half of the previous ones during the serialization, it would be different. Of course, people who understand can afford books and plan to buy them. People who buy books are almost equivalent to upgrading from VIP users to VIP, and they feel a lot more comfortable spending money. And those who don't have money or are reluctant to spend money to buy books are unhappy. They can't get enough good stories, and now they have to cut them in half. Who would be happy, but the newspaper didn't force you to buy them, they just said they only sell half of them now. Yes, I want to buy it or not. What else? Swear and buy at the same time. I bought everything, so I couldn't let it go to waste. After catching up on updates, my eyes fell on the novel section next door. Before reading it, almost 80% of the people were quite dissatisfied and angry with this new novel that had taken the place among their favorite novels. When they glanced at the author and found out that it was an unknown person named Mr. Dongliu, Their dissatisfaction became even more intense. Upgraded? Is it just such an unknown new author who has stolen Mr. Shen's C position? Pooh. What he wrote is not half as good as Mr. Shen's. Why should you take Mr. Shen's place? Rubbish. Ba ba ba. The story of Daniel? What a stupid name, Daniel is too tacky. Just shout out on the street and 10 people will come out and agree. Some people felt aggrieved from the bottom of their hearts for Mr. Shen's who had been occupied. Others scolded him for a while. In the end, they still felt that all the money was spent and could not be wasted. They continued to read with a critical attitude. It is also in the first person, but the person who wrote this article is not the protagonist. This book is about a young man. Let me introduce myself first. I live in a small village in the West. I learned some skills from my master when I was a child. My master is a very capable fortune teller. He is neither blind nor blind. He was deaf and lame. I found an abandoned baby and raised him for 10 years before he passed away. In my heart, he was both a teacher and a father. Therefore, after he left, I worked very hard to study the things he left behind, and consciously I learned a lot. But because my master told me that I had bad horoscopes, I could not leave the courtyard arranged by him, otherwise bad things would come to my door. Therefore, I lived for 48 years without ever stepping out of the courtyard. Seeing this, some people have begun to sneer in their hearts, pretending to be gods and ghosts, reading Mr. Shen's memoirs of cultivating immortals, and come to ride on the popularity of these ghosts and gods. As a result, as I continued reading, the picture changed. On the day of my 48th birthday, I woke up at night, only to see a person standing at the entrance of the yard. He had a pale face, blood on his body, wearing a military uniform, and under his feet he was naked. I was a little surprised at the time, but not afraid, because the way he looked at me was hasty and helpless. In addition, he looked like a young man of 14 or 15 years old for ordinary people at my age. If I have a son, he should be as old as him, so I felt soft-hearted as I looked at him. Seeing that he seemed to be very cold and shivering all the time, I felt even more compassionate, and thought that I had learned the magic and was still alive. There was a charm left by the master, so I walked up to him and asked him what he was doing here. His eyes are dark and big, reminding me of the little yellow dog next door. All the dogs in the village are afraid of me and run away when they see me in the yard from a distance. Only the little yellow dog likes to come to me when I am bored. It relieved me a lot of loneliness. Not only did his eyes look like a little yellow dog, but his temperament was also similar, weak and small. After I asked him about it for a while, he hesitated and asked me cautiously, "Excuse me. Can you help me write a letter to my family?" He trembled and told me about his situation. It turned out that he was a soldier named Daniel, and he died on the battlefield. According to him, he was stabbed to death. Before he died, he wanted to crawl back, but he got stuck halfway. He died, and now his body was covered in blood. He was not 14 or 15 years old, but 18. It was just because he didn't eat well and his bowel movements looked small. He wanted me to write a letter to his family because my parents were getting older and were worried that they would not be able to bear the news of his death, so they asked me to write a letter in his name. After I finished writing the letter, I suddenly asked him why he was on the battlefield so early in the morning. I thought he wanted to say that I was forced to go there, or that the family didn't have enough to eat. Unexpectedly, he raised his finger and pointed at the sky, looking brightly with his dark eyes that looked like a little yellow dog. He looked at me and said in a clear voice with a local accent, "This is the fate of our country. If our country is not strong, the Chinese people will always be bullied. Farmers, businessmen, officials, rich and poor will never be able to hold their heads high and will always be bullied by them. If you want to avoid being bullied and the country is strong, you have to have people to fight, and go to the battlefield. Someone has to go. Otherwise, if the country is gone, the people will be gone too." I was stunned for a long time, and I couldn't tell whether I was stunned because of these words, or because the person who said these words was just an 18-year-old young man who seemed to me to be a child. After he finished speaking, He smiled sheepishly and said, "This is not what I said. It was said by a brother who has studied in our town." After he finished speaking, he went to join the army. I listened and thought what he said was reasonable. I recited it over and over again at home, and when I got it familiar, I went there. But I thought more simply. My parents were bullied by those people before, and even if they went to the officials, it would be useless. Even those people, even if someone is killed in our country, there is no need to take responsibility. I don't want my parents, my brothers and sisters, and the people in the village, town, and city to be suppressed by them all their lives. This is our country. Why? They are the boss. Seeing this, many people's eyes were wet. Yes, this is our country. Why should other countries act as the boss? Why can't we stand tall in our country? An 18-year-old young man knows this truth. At this time, many people who had previously rejected this new novel had changed their views on it, and as they continued to read it, they not only changed their views, but directly turned into fans. I was very happy when I first went there. An elder brother who lived with me could sing folk songs. He taught us how to sing. Sometimes I would hide and sing secretly. When I thought about it, maybe it would be a few years, 10 years, or decades later. My son and daughter can work openly in the fields and sing folk songs, which makes me even happier. I looked at the moon at night. It was bright and big. It was exactly the same as what I saw when I was a child. I was thinking, will the moon always be like this, always visible? Then will it be possible to see it one day? Those people were driven out of China by us. Thinking about it, I fell asleep happily. The injury was really painful. I'm actually not a kid anymore. There were people in our camp who were much younger than me. One time, a 16-year-old soldier was injured and kept crying. At night, I heard him whispering for his mother. It was only the next day that the body was found to be cold. He said that his parents were killed by the Japs. Maybe his mother came to pick him up last night, which was good. He missed his parents all the time. It's a small page, but it makes people cry. Especially when I think that such an 18-year-old boy who was lively, optimistic, and liked to look forward to a better future, and said these words in a brisk tone, has died, and died coldly on the battlefield. It makes people want to cry even more. Even though Mr. Donglio stated from the beginning that it was purely fictional, what this 18-year-old boy described was too real. It seems that there really was such a young man named Daniel who was full of longing for the future and couldn't bear the bad news to his parents. He went to the battlefield to protect the country, and finally died there alone. After reading it, some people began to feel ashamed for their previous contempt and rejection of Mr. Donglio. Mr. Donglio's writing is no worse than Mr. Shen's. Mr. Shen's writing makes people happy, but Mr. Donglio's writing is more touching. Daniel is so pitiful. I don't know where his hometown is. If possible, I would like to support his parents so that he doesn't have to worry about his family after he passes away. There was also someone who bought the entire book Memoirs of the Cultivation of Immortality and finished reading it early. He was so happy with it that after reading the new book, he sighed, it would be great if the whole page could be filled with the story of Daniel. I really want to read more. Mr. Donglio is much better than Mr. Shen's in terms of writing. These words immediately aroused dissatisfaction among Shen's fans. What do you mean? Mr. Shen's writing is so beautiful. How can a mere newcomer surpass him? Someone who was passing by and had just finished reading the story of Daniel happened to hear this and interrupted, "You can't say that. Wasn't Mr. Shen's also a newcomer before he wrote Memoirs of a Cultivation of Immortality? As I see it, both are newcomers. Mr. Donglio is better." It's nonsense. Mr. Shen's clearly writes better. Don't you think Mr. Donglio's writing is more immersive? Obviously Mr. Shen's writing is more deeply rooted in people's hearts. Mr. Donglio wrote about the battlefield in such detail that he was immersed in it. Isn't it Mr. Shen's? Even Mr. Shen's knows what happened in the Northwest. Mr. Dongliu has stayed in a small courtyard his whole life. Can he write about it? The person who wrote the article is Mr. Dongliu, but it may not be him who stays in the small courtyard. Didn't you see that Mr. Dongliu said it was fiction? Mr. Shen still wrote fiction, but nothing he wrote was true. Such a topic has been discussed on the street, but I can't stop it even if I want to. Shen's fans and Dongliu fans could talk to each other calmly at first, but later they became heated and turned into a quarrel. They all had to lose face and didn't start fighting in the street, but even so, it was enough for them to make a fuss. Lu Qingru saw the scene when he was passing by and raised his forehead. These readers are so pitiful and lovely. I have no idea that the pink and black ones are the same person. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 129. Along the way, Lu Qingru met at least 3 waves who went to tell Ji Changs about the topic of should the novel page be given to Mr. Shen's or Mr. Dongliu, trying to make this junior brother have a conscience and start a new life. As a result, Ji Changs took out the spare paper for his vest. In that case, it's time for them to meet Mr. 11 Chiang. Lu Qingru. He squinted his eyes for 2 seconds, and his face was full of words. When did you add Mr. Nantung to your place? Are you planning to join forces? Ji Chang smiled and handed the vest paper to him. It's southeast, northwest. Look, Mr. Baikan. Lu Qingru. He finally saw clearly that this junior brother was trying to get a deck of Mahjong cards. Rowan Daly has been in the limelight recently. Mr. Shen's and Mr. Dongliu, just 2 people, directly support the entire newspaper office. Although the original newspaper office was not said to be very hard, there are many newspaper offices in the city. It is very difficult for them to compete. It's different now. Whether you like Mr. Shen's or Mr. Dongliu, don't you have to buy their newspaper Rowan Daily? Even if they don't buy a newspaper but buy a book directly, doesn't the profit from the book also belong to their newspaper company? It is precisely because of the booming sales of this book in the city that the big bosses in the city have greatly increased their confidence. He thought that even if everyone in the city bought their newspaper and Mr. Shen's books, there were only so many people and the market was so big. If you wanted to make more, you couldn't just stay in one place, so he came up with a takeout method. Of course, when they were discussing cooperation, they agreed with Ji Changs that they would sell the books within the city. If they wanted to go outside, the share would have to be negotiated again. After all, to sell locally, they only needed to print the books and find booksellers to cooperate with. But if you go to other places, you have to pay for transportation first. In addition, you are not familiar with the place. If you want to do business in a place, you have to deal with the local snakes. Booksellers from other places may not know the power of Memoirs of a Cultivation of Immortality, and it is also necessary to discuss cooperation. It takes a lot of energy, and you have to rent a shop to sell it yourself. In short, it's a lot of trouble. No, Lu Qingru came here just to talk about this matter. My junior brother, he was naturally looking for me, and what he said was sincere and heartfelt. Don't look at the money you get is less than before. Although our place is prosperous, it is only a city after all. The country is so big. There are so many people who are literate and love reading. As long as you push out the books, you will make more money in the future. Of course Ji Changs knows this truth. In fact, the conditions given by Rowan Daly are quite impressive. Although the big boss loves money, he is not short of money. His father is the real big boss. He just wants to. If you run a big newspaper, you don't have much ambition to reap profits quickly. It is precisely because of this that the big boss was extremely generous after identifying Mr. Shen's, who did not yet know that Shen's and Dongliu were the same person, as the newspaper's cash cow. Money. For you. As long as you can write good works in the future and stay in our newspaper office well, all this bad news will be yours. Of course, Lu Qingru didn't say that to his boss, but it didn't stop Ji Chang's from understanding what he meant. He agreed immediately and quickly. Lu Qingru also told Ji's father about this as usual. When Ji's father heard that his eldest son had been thinking about it, he agreed without taking long. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart full of fatherly love. Hey, Nagasawa, although it seems that he has discovered the talent for writing now, this child has never experienced it. Despite all the ups and downs, thinking about things is still too simple, and I actually agreed without thinking about it carefully. Fortunately, he, the father, is watching. Thinking like this, Ji's father cheered up and asked Lu Qingru to tell him the conditions given by the big boss. After listening to it, I was a little surprised to find that the big boss was really sincere and there was no room for him to give any opinions. It seems that Nagasawa is really lucky, and all the collaborators he meets are so sincere. After both the Ji family and his son agreed, Lu Qingru told the big boss the news the next day. The big boss happily started looking for people to connect people and print books, planning to do something real. The father standing behind him was also very satisfied with his son's successful career. It is conceivable that the big boss is no longer short of money. As the big boss's big backer, his own father is naturally not short of money. Nowadays, whoever has the soldiers is the boss. It is not easy to get money. Rowan Daly recently: no one dares to have any evil thoughts when the limelight is so great, isn't it because there is this big boss behind it? The boss also wanted to contribute to his son's career, so he gave some instructions to his subordinates, so the newspaper office was escorted all the way out of the city. When they arrived, the escort brought the boss's letter to the local boss. I've asked you to help take care of my son's business. Can you not take care of it? As a result, other businessmen who want to expand abroad have to be cautious along the way. When they get to the place, they ask their grandfather to sue their grandmother, but the people from Rowan Daly do not have to. There are people to protect them on the road, and when they get to the local snakes, they will also treat them with courtesy and greet them. The next step is to sell books and find bookstores. However, it is unlikely that everything will be smooth sailing. When discussing cooperation, many booksellers expressed doubts about this book that they had never heard of. After all, information is not developed nowadays. Even if the book written by Ji Chang's becomes popular throughout the city, it is impossible for everyone in other cities to know about it in such a short period of time. The people in the newspaper office are all mouthy, and most people who open bookstores are cautious and think about it again. Today, when the owner of a bookstore came home for dinner, he told the news at the dinner table. When the eldest son heard the title of the book, his eyes immediately lit up and he quickly asked, "Dad, is it really a memoir of cultivating immortality? Was it written by Mr. Shen's?" The boss thought for a while. It seems to be written by Shen Ziyi. Why, do you know this book? The expression on the eldest son's face became even more excited. My classmate's father brought him a book, Memoirs of Cultivation to Immortality, written by Mr. Shen's. I also borrowed it and read it. It's really beautiful. I heard the supply is in short supply in my classmate's father's hometown. Father, if you want to buy Memoirs of a Cultivation of Immortality, you must buy more. This book is very beautiful and will definitely sell well. The boss was dubious. But his son grew up in a bookstore and had read countless books. It was unlikely that he would be fooled by an ordinary book. He hesitated and agreed. The next day, when the boss arrived at the place, he first picked up a copy of Memoirs of Cultivation as an Immortal and read it. The more he read, the more excited he became. Finally, he gritted his teeth and settled on 3 times the amount he had originally planned. Colleagues who knew him looked at it with surprised eyes. His eyes seemed to think that he was crazy, and he actually bought so many books that were not famous, in their place. If he couldn't sell them all, he would have them smashed into his hands. After all, it was the local boss who pulled the strings. Although most people were not very interested, they still took some books back with them. I was all ready to pack the boxes, but unexpectedly, early the next morning, there would be knocks on the door of major bookstores. When the door opened, someone asked anxiously, "Mr. Shen's Cultivation of Immortality is memoir available for sale?" "Yes, are there any for sale?" "I want to buy it too, do you have it here?" The boss was stunned for a moment, but how could he not do it when the business came to his door? He opened the door and started selling books. What he didn't expect was that after this wave left, another wave came again. Passers-by saw the excitement at the door of the bookstore and came over curiously to find out what was going on. Immediately, some enthusiastic people came to buy books and learned about Memoirs of a Cultivation of Immortality. "I heard it was written by a cultivator, and it tells where he went. My cousin has a copy. I borrowed it and read it. It's very beautiful. Take a look." Others stood on the side of the street and recited loudly to their fellow travelers. Passers-by only overheard it at first, but ended up falling into trance as they listened. In addition, so many people rushing to buy it are touting it in various ways. Those who have grabbed it are happy, and those who have not grabbed it sigh. This makes people who are not short of money also want to buy a copy to see what it is about. It doesn't matter what kind of thing it is. If others have it, it's okay if you don't have it. In just one day, the situation reversed, and major bookstores were sold out. Lu Qingru, who was sent out, took the money in hand and distributed it one by one to the extras playing the role of rush buyers. This routine is quite old, but the trick is not old, it just works. The book is a good book. If he only starts the book, the rest of the book will never collapse. Lu Qingru's prediction was good. Within one day, Memoirs of a Cultivation of Immortality and Mr. Shen Ziyi's name spread throughout the city. Those who bought the book praised it, while those who didn't bought it were greedy and their hearts were itchy. They were not short of money and wanted to buy it, but it's no use, the bookstore doesn't have that much stock. So, the original 5 points I wanted was immediately raised to 8 points after I couldn't buy it. They are scratching their heads and feeling uncomfortable, and so are the bookstore owners. The bosses who had previously dismissed the book could only look at the batches of customers asking for help, and then left disappointed after receiving the answer that it was sold out. Only the boss who listened to the words of the eldest son in the family made a lot of money, until he sold the last copy and counted the money sold today, his smiling eyes narrowed to a slit. At this moment, whether they make money or not, all bookstore owners are thinking about one thing. Who is this Mr. Shen's who has such a great influence? Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, CleverProtagonist. Chapter 130. Mr. Shen's books are selling like crazy. At the beginning, selling requires a little trick, but when the books become popular, Lu Qingru doesn't need to use the tricks mentioned above. As soon as he settles in a nearby city, booksellers can't wait to come to his door with expectant faces. When I left, there was one long queue of people from the newspaper office and escorts. When I came back, it actually turned into 2 long queues. Ji Chang's was walking around with Ji's father recently, and happened to bump into this return scene. Lu Qingru saw the energetic teacher and the handsome junior brother standing in the wind at a glance, and the fatigue in his body was immediately shaken off. The teacher had just recovered from his illness, and the junior brother was so busy every day that he even came to greet him. Touched, so touched. Lu Qingru hurriedly patted himself to make sure there was no dust before he stepped forward and began to explain how touched he was by the 2 people's behavior of coming to greet them. Father Ji, who was just out for a walk. Seeing his son opening his mouth to speak, he quickly cut off the topic, took the student's hand, and said with a subtle smile, "It's nothing. You, me, teacher and student, it's natural for me to come to greet you." Lu Qingru was even more moved. Since ancient times, only students have welcomed teachers, and no teachers have welcomed students. Sure enough, the teacher kept him in mind. Lu Qingru was the leader of the team on this business trip. Seeing that he had not come back for a long time and started calling people later, he had to turn around to make arrangements, greeted the two of them and left. Ji's father smiled when he saw the students leaving, then turned to look at his son and said with a smile, "Nagaze, your senior brother came back after a hard trip and is happy to see us, so let him continue to be happy." Not telling the truth will, on the one hand, strengthen the relationship between teachers and students, and on the other hand, it will make Lu Qingru happy for a long time, which is a good deal. Ji Chang's, who originally wanted to say yes, that's right, senior brother, we are just waiting for you, nodded, Dad is thoughtful. Seeing this, Ji's father smiled with satisfaction, feeling quite proud in his heart. No, otherwise he is Nagasawa's father and his son. He waited until Lu Qingru arranged for the motorcade to enter the city before returning. He waited until he had settled in and went to Ji's house before telling them why there were more people than when he left. Nagase's books sold so well. I got a lot of silver dollars in exchange for them. There were too many. I was afraid that it would be unsafe on the road, so I hired a group of people. Teacher, you don't know, I was eating and drinking along the way. It's not good, I can't sleep well. I kept dreaming that someone had robbed me of this money. It's such a huge sum of money. I knew I could make money by selling books, but I didn't expect to make this much money. Ji's father took a sip of tea, glanced at the students, and wrote lightly, "You can't hold your breath at a young age. The more money you have, the more money will scare you. You still need to practice more." Lu Qingru quickly and respectfully responded, "Yes, the teacher is right." He turned around and took out the account book. "Teacher, take a look, this is the account book. I happen to be here. We can calculate in advance how much Nagasawa will get this time." Ji's father still didn't care. He is now used to his son earning money by writing books, but that amount of money may be a lot for ordinary people, but for him who once had a family business, it is not that exaggerated after all. But the student was kind-hearted and didn't want to show anything, so he smiled and said, "Thank you for the hard work." After saying that, he raised his teacup to take a sip and put his eyes on the ledger. Ji Chang's, who was sitting next to him, quickly reached out and took down the teacup that Ji's father had brought to his lips, and said without changing his expression, "The tea has gone cold. I'll help Dad pour a new cup." Ji's father didn't take it seriously and reached out to open the account book. Then he squirted. Oh no, he didn't drink tea, and there was nothing in his mouth to squirt. He was just a little sluggish. So much money? Was he selling books or robbing a treasury? Even if he saw this money in the past, he would still weigh it and deal with it, but it turned out that these were money from selling Nagasawa's books. Subconsciously, his mind began to think about the money his son could get. Even if you exclude the portion obtained by newspapers, the remaining figures are staggering enough. Father Ji was shocked. Ji Chang's also glanced at the account book. Unlike Ji's father, he calculated how many people had bought the book for so much money. Sure enough, it was pretty much what he expected. It seemed that Jen's vest could be used for many purposes. After all, the audience base had been cultivated. Money must be indispensable, so I will have free time to dig holes for my uncle. No, it is to help my uncle repent of his life and realize that the true meaning of life is the ups and downs. He had thought about it all, but Ji's father still didn't move for a long time, stunned, so Ji Chang's praised, "Dad is worthy of being a dad. He doesn't change his expression when seeing so much money." Senior brother and I still need to learn more study. When Lu Qingru heard this, he also blew the rainbow fart. That's right, I still need to learn more about the teacher's vision. In fact, it was Ji's father who was stunned. Ahem, well, yes, you guys, you still need to learn more. Even if you are half as calm as I am, don't make a fuss when you see something. Call. Fortunately, this kid Nagasawa is easy to coax, so he was given a chance to step down by some strange combination of circumstances. It seems that it is not necessarily a bad thing that his son was raised to be too naive and easy to deceive.